No, I knew it. I just didn't use it. Thank you for your patience, folks. We're going to get started here, and it's just a sec. I would like to call this meeting of the Cambria Community Services District Board to order. And if you would all please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you for your patience in my tardiness. I apologize. If you would please silence all your electronic devices. If you would like to make a comment on any item on the agenda or not on the agenda, you need to fill out a speaker slip, please, and turn it in to Miss Madrid down here on the end. In general, we allow comments that are 3 minutes apiece on each item on the agenda, and there's one public comment period for items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the district. All that said, we do have a quorum. Do we have a report from closed session?
Madam President, at our first special meeting of the month, we had labor negotiations regarding IAFF and SEIU and management. We also discussed pending litigation, the Mickey case, and we discussed the initiation of litigation potentially. And on Friday, there was another special meeting at which 2 anticipated litigation cases were discussed, but there's nothing to report.
Thank you very much for that. Agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Today, we briefly talked about this at the January board meeting about rearranging the order of the agenda to have the hearing items come earlier or the general managers and staff reports to come later. And so this is the time for us to be able to discuss if there are changes that any directors would like to see in the order of business for our meetings. This was actually an idea suggested by Vice President Behringer that we have it at this time. And if you are caught a little off guard, I apologize for that. But I do want to make sure we get all the input of all of the directors on this. Vice President Behringer.
Yeah, I think it was a result of trying to make the meeting more efficient and get to the regular business earlier so that people didn't have to wait around so long. So the only change I would do in looking at this particular agenda is flip item number 5 and 6. What that would do is that would take the consent agenda and put it after regular business. If we pulled an item from the consent agenda, it would become essentially a regular business item. And by doing that, if we run short, the only thing left would be the consent agenda. That's what I'm throwing out. And in the future, if we have people that are presenting things, and right now we have someone that's going to be the pros, goals, and objectives, in this particular case, in future agendas, I would like to see something like that maybe be right up with just before the general manager's report. In fact, today, I don't know if somebody's here from pros. If no one's here from pros right now, we should maybe just leave it in the regular business. But otherwise, something like that, I'd like to see at the first part of the agenda, and I'm wondering what other people think on that.
Director Farmer.
With regard to rearranging the scheduled items, I'm not so sure that flipping 5 and 6 is going to make that much of a difference. I appreciate the fact that Vice President Behringer has actually addressed this issue. As he has said, what should probably come first are the issues that most of the people in the audience wish to discuss in one fashion or another, or are here to find out more information about. So I'm just wondering if, in fact, perhaps the general manager's report should be also perhaps reorganized with regard to 4, 5, and 6. That's just something that I'm bringing up. Now I don't know how other districts do their business, but perhaps regular business could come before the general manager's report. I don't know how the general manager feels about that, but he has to be here for the entire meeting anyway. So it's more like what is most efficient and effective for the residents of the community that are attending or watching on TV. Thank you.
Director Wharton?
Yeah, I agree with Director Farmer with the manager's report. Maybe just flipping general manager report to the end. A lot of people, as of late, seem to be interested in the finance report, so I'd like to see that still up front. That's a pretty hot topic. Fire chief, he's here for the duration, unless he gets called out. But maybe we get him out of the way. But just put get Jerry's, because Jerry's is generally a pretty all-encompassing report.
Mm-hmm.
He can make it quick, he said. I think I thought that's what we were discussing, just maybe moving Jerry's report around a little bit. But as far as consent agenda and regular business, I don't see great time savings with that one.
Okay, I'm hearing some consensus, and I'd like to make sure that I'm hearing correctly, that maybe we switch next month, not this month, because I don't think that it, since people don't know, who are not here, who couldn't be here, don't know that it would be flipped. We'll start next month doing the switching number 4 to be number 6. We would still have the sheriff's department up front. Now, with the finance, do you want to keep the finance with the staff reports, with the general manager's report, or do you want to have that come before?
With the interest Rudy has been generating, I think keeping that up front, people, if they're here for that, then they want to maybe get that out of the way, and then maybe that's all they're here for. I just think that's pretty up front, hot topic with that finance. I'd hate to bury that in the meeting.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Director
I think
Pearson?
next month especially, his report is going to be very substantial, so we might want to have his up front for sure.
Vice President
I
Behringer.
have a slip to
Oh,
speak on
okay.
this item.
Yes, I have a one speaker slip. Ms. Tina Dickinson, please join us.
Yeah, Tina Dickinson. Thank you, President Rice. I had spoken to Chief Hollingsworth a couple of months ago about the fact that he's here for meetings that actually have no report or an agenda item. And I'm wondering why the ratepayers are paying for the chief to be at the entirety of some meetings when there's nothing on the agenda that is related to him or a report. So I'm not understanding that. With apparently a shortness of firefighters coming up and whatever, I don't understand why the chief needs to be here for the entirety of meetings unless there's an item like today. There is. But on the meetings that were strictly related to the appointment of directors, I don't understand why a fire chief needs to be here. So while you're talking about these things, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howell, did you want to speak on this item?
This is public comment, correct?
Not on open public comment. Okay, just making sure. All right. So for next month, I think that we have our marching orders and a consensus agreement on the changing of the order of things. We'll make sure finance stays up front, especially next month, for sure. All right. Thank you for indulging in that conversation. I would just want to make sure that we have a board agreement before we change things around too much. All right. We're going to start now with regular public comment. This is for items not on the agenda today and within the jurisdiction of the CCSD. I would like to thank my assistant here. Mr. Vice President does a good job with all the speaker slips. Thank you. If there's a goof up, it's me. Starting with Tina Dickinson, followed by Don Howell.
Thank you, Tina Dickinson. I provided for each board member a 3-page letter from the Coastal Commission dated February 15th and addressed to Erlen Singlewald. This is regarding the proposed coastal development permit, the minor use permit for wet weather preparedness. I want to just talk about a couple of things they're bringing up. They say that they in short, so I'm going to have to skip over a lot of this. In short, the proposed project application does not appear to be consistent with several applicable provisions of the Local Coastal Program, the LCP, including its Coastal Zone Land Use Ordinance. It also says under ESHA, our primary concern is that the proposed project includes extensive vegetation removal and grading within an environmentally sensitive habitat area, which is not allowed under the county's LCP. The CZLUO defines ESHA as including, quote, areas known as habitat for species determined to be threatened, endangered, or otherwise needing protection, end of quote. As noted in the CCSD's July 2017 final environmental impact report, the area in which this application proposes to conduct vegetation removal and grading is designated critical habitat for the California red-legged frog. And it goes on under that topic. Under project description, the application does not fully or consistently describe the proposed project activities and does not include all information required as part of their application. It's not clear whether this application is for wet weather preparedness activities only or whether it is intended to also authorize other components of CCSD's proposed water facility. However, the application states on page 5 that the project is a, quote, community water system, end of quote. That's all very interesting. I thought it was just pertaining to the MUP. Public hearing, they are advocating that a public hearing take place on this item. This project appears at the very least to be a component of a larger desal project and community-wide water project. Further, the proposed project will also require the county to make a level of local public interest. So you have it before you. I don't know that you had it prior to my providing it for you today, but I felt it was important for you to see it. And they say, the Coastal Commission in closing, thank you for attention to these comments. Please ensure that these comments are made part of the public record for the proposed project and that they are provided in full to all appropriate decision-making bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. Dawn, we'll have the general manager respond after we have public comment. Mr. Howell.
Thank you. Okay. Don Howell. You've heard this before. Please let me know if I'm out of order on this one. I noticed that later on you were going to consider putting on the agenda a discussion for next month about the use of the advanced water treatment plant. I'm not talking directly about that, but I am talking about that, though. So let me know if this starts to get out of order. Basically, we tell our children, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And while that may be good advice for children, I think we have found that words do matter. Names do count. And so this business of what's in a name is just a name. And the fact of the matter is, we have many restrictions on our speech based upon people's reaction to various expressions or various names. In this case, pardon me, the change from emergency water supply to sustainable water facility, I'm not aware of any, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that this actually came up for public discussion as an agendized item when it was originally rebranded. And I wish to just read very briefly some excerpts from correspondence that's come from the district since the project began. And remembering that this current board is not the same board that put forth the project. However, there is considerable public distrust, at least on some people, and some people feeling that the former board majority did in fact pull a bait and switch. Now, I'm not saying that, but that is often the impression. And let me just read a very few things. On June 6, 2014, the notice of proposed increase in water rates. It says the increase in water rates is intended to fund the cost of an emergency water supply project. This was what went out to the people prior to their voting. In September 2014, letter from the general manager speaks about, this is regarding water rate increase, signed by Jerry Gruber, and it says, the new charges will pay for the construction and operation of an emergency water supply project designed to operate during periods of drought. In January of 2015, the EWS could not have been built without your willingness to assume the costs of its construction and operation. March 2015. Maybe not. Oh, here it is. In the long run, I envision the EWS as a key part of Cambria's water portfolio. And then notice of public hearing, November of 2015. That one's not there. So basically, so all this time it had been so referred to, and then somehow magically morphed. And while some of you are adopting the less, the more meaningful term of advanced water treatment, I'm still hearing, particularly from the general manager, and in the bills that come out, we're still hearing about the sustainable water facility. I really think that getting the discussion off of call it what it is, not what it should be used for, then you can have the discussion of how to use it. Sorry to go over there.
That's all right. Thank you very much for bringing that forward. Is there anyone else for general public comment? Mr. Gruber, can you speak briefly to the letter that was brought up by Ms. Dickinson?
Yes, President Rice and board members. Ms. Dickinson is referring to the letter that was sent to Airland Singlewall dated February 7th. I did distribute that to the board on February 8th, and the main premise within the letter is talking about ESHA, which is Environmentally Sensitive Habitat Area. And yesterday, President Rice and Director Pearson and myself and District Engineer Bob Greshams, along with county planning staff, met, and we had our standing monthly meeting with them regarding the regular coastal development permit. And what I did a couple months ago as part of these meetings is extended an invitation to Tom Luster so he could be a part of these meetings and to make sure that we're all on the same page. And one of the things that was discussed at this meeting in length was this letter. Now, there seems to be, I wouldn't say a disagreement, but there's some additional clarification that needs to be answered in the letter from county planning, and that's really what is designated as ESHA and what is not designated as ESHA. I thought it was a very productive meeting. I thought everybody was highly respectful of each other. But where we left off regarding this specific letter was that Airland would be working, Mr. Singlewall, would be working with county staff and the planning department to address the concerns within the letter. I think the most important part of all this is that we're not working in a vacuum anymore with the California Coastal Commission. Bringing Mr. Luster into the conversations when we meet once a month is important because issues like this can be discussed and some kind of resolution can be reached as we move forward with bringing this to the Planning Commission. So I did distribute it to the board. They saw this. It was distributed, like I said, I think February 8th, if memory serves me correct. And so I appreciate Ms. Dickinson bringing this to our attention. And I answer any more questions from the board. I think, I think because both you folks were there, maybe I missed something.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Did you want to add anything, Director Pearson? No, I appreciate that, and I think that clarifies at least some of the questions. I'm sure there's always questions more, but I appreciate you addressing that. All right, next up, public safety. I see Commander Vogue. Welcome, sir. Should I give you 3 minutes, or?
That wouldn't be a bad idea, though.
Welcome back. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For this last month in Cambria, we had 110 calls for service. 21 of those were suspicious circumstances subject to criminal acts, 3 phone scans, 1 bailing grandson out of jail, and IRS is starting to pick up again. We only had 1 for each of the months before that and 0 the month before that, so they're starting to pick up again. 10 disturbing the peace, 10 check the welfare, 3 petty thefts, 28 audible burglary alarms, and none of them were valid, which is a good thing. Burglaries, we had 4, and this is one of the crimes that I always look at because they're what we call repressible crimes, something that we feel that we can have impact on, and certainly as a resident here, I'm very concerned about burglaries. But the good part of these, and this means they're calls, doesn't necessarily mean it was a burglary. The 4 burglaries, 1 was a trespass only, One was a missing medication. This is a common call that we get when somebody's missing. This one was a bit suspicious, their medication, and they can't get, and usually they're opioids, and they can't get a refill unless they report it stolen. So there was no evidence of theft, except they said my medication was missing. We had one trespasser in a vacant house, and probably the most interesting one at the Burton Inn, we had a drunk man in his 40s wearing a Sherlock Holmes hat, urinating in the hallway, possibly masturbating in front of a room. We responded code 3, but Sherlock got out of there quickly, so we didn't catch him. But pay attention to Sherlock Holmes hats around here, and give us a call if you suspect something. A couple notable events, and this is something that I think everybody has to have a little caution about advertising on maybe Facebook or the internet. And this was a completely innocent advertisement of a lady wanting to be a caregiver. She put it on internet and Facebook. She received 2 emails, one by a Clara Knight and one by Carly Brindle. We don't think these people exist. She was contacted, and Clara Knight and Carly said they wanted to hire her, sight unseen, no questions asked. And in fact, they'll provide her with money up front. And they sent her a check of $1,950.12. She immediately went to Rabo Bank with her good fortune and tried to deposit it, and they found out it was a fraudulent check. So usually what they do on situations like this, they will give you money. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. They will give you money to deposit and then say, whoops, we gave you too much. Can you give us back some? Which usually comes out of their own funds because there's a hold on the check. And then all of a sudden you try to follow up on it, and it's all fictitious names, fictitious accounts, and everything else. So, another interesting case that we had, a local Cambrian, a young man that grew up here, is known well to us. A lot of times he's transient, walked in and out of the Parts Unknown store, and the alarm went off. And usually they have security tags on a lot of their items, particularly the jewelry. And they asked him to stop, and he said, I didn't take anything, and opened up his coat and then continued to walk, didn't wait for our arrival. We were looking for him, and 3 days later we found him, and he had kind of an interesting bracelet on that didn't look like it was his. So we asked him about it. He said a friend of his out of the area gave it to him a long time ago, and so we said, we don't believe you, but we will take it and issue a receipt and give it back to you if everything checks out okay. We went to Parts Unknown, and they said, nope, that's not our bracelet, sorry. And so he said, okay. We walked across the street to Among Friends, where he was arrested before on a shoplifting case, and the lady not only identified it, she said, I made it. And then we looked that he was in there and he shoplifted, actually 3 items, not just the one. So we sent that to the district attorney's office for charges against him. A question came up at North Coast Advisory Committee last night about when you have people in private businesses that look suspicious or causing trouble, really, and I told them it's really the responsibility of that private business. You know, it is a private business, and they don't have to allow everybody in there, so that's something important. Another kind of a crime that has a good ending on the 12th of February at 2000 block of Village Lane down in Tent City at the auto repair shop. The son's owner left his vehicle parked there, and he came back in the next morning and found a 8,000-pound winch and a customized bumper were missing from his vehicle, along with some gasoline. We found out through our investigation that the space next to theirs was being cleaned out. We found out the person's name who was cleaning it out. We ran that person. He lives in Atascadero. He had warrants out for his arrest already. We went to his location at Atascadero, and guess what we found? A big bumper and a winch. Actually, the gasoline was already in the car, so we couldn't pull that out. So we arrested him for the warrants and the theft. And other than that, it's been a pretty mild month in Cambria. So any questions at all?
Director Pearson.
Yeah, could you give us an update on your homeless sweeps and
Sure.
how that's going?
We, as you all know, I kind of took a vigorous campaign a while ago to stop the illegal camps. And as I said before, it's not a war against homelessness. All these people can't help it. It's a war against campfires and camping in Fiscalini Ranch and, you know, the the problems that we all face as residents here. And we made some quite inroads there. CCSD, Jerry worked with us on that in getting rid of some of the stuff. Caltrans worked with us. So we had a lot of positive results. Unfortunately, sometimes when we relocate them, we try to offer services to others, and a lot of them will not take it. When we relocate them, you will see more of a presence in the town itself. We've been seeing more sightings around the post office and that. But the reason being is because we have, in fact, at CCSD, we've had campers there that we've relocated. So we want the public to continue to call us for illegal camps, and we will continue. You know, the biggest key on any of this is sustainability, and we have to keep on doing it. Probably next week, I'm going to get some deputies, and I have the same problem in Los Osos too, and I have to bring them in on overtime, actually, because we need more than our regular assigned deputies, and go in there and personally check it out. And if we need to clean up again, Jerry will be getting my call, and Caltrans will be getting a call. But it's something that we have to keep checking on a regular basis. But so far, so good. We had one a couple weeks ago that was had a felony warrant, so that was nice. We were able to, take him to jail. So, anything else?
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We have the general manager's report up next, and I'm assuming we're going to fold in Senator Flores' report with your report, because I don't see him listed specifically.
Yes,
and
Madam
he's
President,
here, so.
if that's okay with the board. And one other item, and we do have some folks here from the Historical Society, and we didn't include this as a separate agenda item. We just included it for informational purposes. And under General Manager's report, if it's okay with Madam President and the board, there are some public speaker slips from the Historical Society that would specifically like to talk about the CCSD-owned properties that I've included in a list here. So I'll just go ahead and give a brief update on my General Manager's report. On the first paragraph, you're going to see that staff will also be making a recommendation in November. And thank you, Madam President, for pointing this out to me regarding the appropriate stage of water conservation the board should be considered in the immediate future. That should read March. I'm not going to wait till November to tell you about the water situation. But I will tell you this, with the lack of precipitation to date and what looks to be a very dry winter, staff continues to monitor the district's water supply. As a future agenda item in March, staff will be bringing a detailed report forward regarding the sustainable water facility and what efforts have been made to date to prepare for the next startup cycle. I want to make sure, and if it's okay with the board, I want to make sure that we have this as a separate agenda item. And the reason being is because there's a lot of activity going on with the sustainable water facility. And the question that I hear from the board, but also from the public every day is, Jerry, when we need to turn this thing on, are we going to be ready to turn it on? And the answer that I have for you right now is yes. But there's a great deal of preparation that needs to be done to prepare us to be able to do that. And so what I'd like to be able to do is have it as an agenda item, spend about a half an hour bringing the board up to date on the work on the impoundment basin, the modification to our permit Form 200 that we've submitted to Regional Water Quality Control Board, and that's for alternate brine disposal, our agreement with the South County Sanitation District on disposal of brine, and just a whole bunch of other items that we're working on to make sure that when the time comes, we'll be able to run that facility. So it's more of an informational opportunity, and Bob and I'd like to present that in March if it's okay. Talking about the water situation, just a couple FYI notes here. On page 40, you'll see the statistics for the well levels, and if you look at the Santa Rosa well number 4, and you look at just the average depth water levels on our wells, we're on Santa Rosa 4. We're at 52.3 feet. Now that seems like a lot of water, but that's a confined, what they call a confined aquifer. It hasn't been studied extensively from a hydrological perspective, but what's interesting about the characteristics of the well 4 and those wells up there is when it does start to drop, if you remember from a historical perspective, it seems to drop pretty significantly and pretty quickly. And again, it's because the characteristics of the aquifer below Santa Rosa 4. So it's more of a confined aquifer, if you will. And if you go down to the San Simeon wells and you look at the average of the San Simeon wells for San Simeon wells out there, you'll see that it's 13.9 feet. And last year, if you look at Jason's water report, he indicates last year that at this time the wells in the San Simeon well field were about 20 feet. Well, that was from an inundation of a very wet winter, and what we're seeing and what we believe now is, and he refers to the Palmer Flats, is that some of these well depth levels are residual, if you will, I believe is the word he used from last year's precipitation. So the other components that I keep a check on from an operational perspective is the gradient out at the wastewater at the wastewater perk ponds. We're showing a positive gradient of 1.66 feet, which is good. And then the Windsor Bridge East, that's over by the wastewater treatment plant. That bridge there's a monitoring well that if it drops below 3 feet, we have some things that we need to deal with, and it triggers not being able to use certain wells. So we're still at 5.7 feet. And also what was suggested to me is to keep an eye on production. And if you look at the production sheets right here that we have on page 38, they start on page 37. On page 37, if you look at January statistics for acre feet of water, and you look at San Simeon, we're at 14.87 and 29.65. For January, we used a total of 44.51 feet. And then trend down, if you will. So this is all the way to the left on page 37. You'll see 44.1 acre feet. Now look at 2017, we were at 38.80. And 16, we're at 34.30, and then 34 going back to 2015 is 34.72. And so without going into a lot of great detail, conservation measures work. Stage 3 works. And also, and this is a policy decision, I believe surcharges work. And so if and when the time comes for the board to decide if that's what they want to do, we're going to continue to, after next month's briefing, to monitor this very closely, and from a staff perspective, make recommendations to you. One of the things that I also provided the board on February 20th is I provided, and also all the staff, is all the resolutions and the verbiage and definitions of what Stage 2 and Stage 3 is, and I distributed this to the board. And let us know if you need any copies, because we have two new board members that are relatively new, and Director Farmer's been on for 14 months now or so, a little over a year. And it's really good late night reading. So if somebody was to ask you, what are the requirements for Stage 2, you'll have that information. And also staff will have that information, because we have a tendency to forget over a period of time what the requirements of Stage 2 are. But more importantly, what Stage 3 is and what that means for us. Now, if and when we decide to go to Stage 3 and that's triggered, that allows us under the Emergency Coastal Development Permit to run the sustainable water facility. But that doesn't necessarily mean that at this point in time we're ready to run the sustainable water facility. We still have to get some approval on our modification from the Regional Water Quality Control Board for brine disposal. So Bob and I and John and Jason, we're working really hard to make sure that we're prepared to do that. The only other thing that I really want to point out in my general manager's report is the growth management ordinance. That's something that happens every 2 years. And then you have the resource management system, which is something else. It determines what level of severity you need to be at. I was asked to give some feedback to the county on the growth management ordinance and where we thought we wanted to be. And I consulted with the president and the vice president and Tim Carmel, and what I did is I sent it back to the county and asked them to just at this time, because we have so much going on, to just keep it at zero. And so I'm hoping the board supports that, because at this point in time, with applying for the regular coastal development permit and so many moving pieces right now, I don't think it would be. I think it would be inconsistent to ask for anything more than that at this time. We do have the right during this 2-year process to seek an amendment to that growth management ordinance anytime we want. So we can do that, and I hope the board's okay with that decision. A couple of other just things really quick is that we do have some CERT training coming up, and I didn't, when I wrote the staff report, I didn't have a specific date. Hopefully Chief Hollingsworth can touch base a little bit on that. But we have over 300 CERT volunteers right now, and it's fantastic, and so there's going to be some more training that I hope people can take advantage of. And staff attended a one-day Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore training. We had 8 or 9 supervisors there, and it was an all-day course, and we attended Fair Labor Standard Act and a guide to implementing public employee discipline. Not that any of our employees need discipline, but I thought it was a good team-building exercise. And so the only other thing that I have, Madam President, is the, and I'll answer any questions, is Senator Flores' report, but also the list of CCSD-owned properties, and then the folks from the Historical Society. I feel like I'm forgetting one thing that's really important. If you could just give me a minute to look over this. I just want to make sure that the recruitment for the CPO SWF's Chief Plant Operator for the Sustainable Water Facility, it was brought to my attention a month or so ago that, boy, this seems to be an ongoing process, and frankly, it is, and it will continue to be. We received 2 applicants, and either one of them did not meet the minimum qualifications. So we're going to broaden and cast that net a lot wider. I believe, I have faith and hope that we're going to get a good qualified candidate for this position, and we're broadening the search to locally, of course, the Cambrian and the Tribune, but we're also including the CSDA website, Association of California Water Agencies, AWWA, BC Water Jobs, and Jobs Available. And we're going to spend a little bit more money by doing this, but I'm hoping that we'll get a good candidate pool to interview and move forward with hiring. And then just, Rudy's not here this month, but March is going to be, if it's okay with Madam President and the Vice President, March is going to be a really big month on focusing on the finances of the district. We have several staff report items that we think are really important, and some different formatting things. But we're hoping that we can designate an hour or so just to go over some really important financial issues of the district, Rudy and I. So with that, I'll answer any questions, and I kept it pretty brief this time. So
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. Is there any questions on the general manager's report? And then we'll get to Mr. Flores. Director Farmer.
Not necessarily a question, but more a comment. First off, I think we should all be grateful that Mother Nature, at least last year, blessed us with about 40 inches of rain here in Cambria, so the well levels are still in decent shape. I want to thank the general manager for bringing up the possibility, or probably the probability, that we'll be discussing more options about conservation and surcharges and stage 3 in the March agenda. But I just happen to have this item here it's actually from the Fresno Bee from last April, and I thought I'd read part of it. Actually, the title is "Droughts Over for Most of California. Now let's get serious about more water storage." So I'm just going to flip to the end of this, and this is the Fresno Bee. So I just want to flip to right here at the end of this article where it says, "In wet and dry years, we must utilize all the water we can. This requires new above-ground water storage incorporated into a broad water portfolio that includes wastewater recycling, stormwater capture, conservation, and environmental protection. When I think about the past, there was a time when cisterns were being really encouraged in the community. The district was actually giving rebates. That goes back a long ways, but I know a lot of people are doing that. I just want to follow up on all of this, that somehow this little community, even with our limited funds, we should be investigating all of these opportunities for our community, and that even includes perhaps off-stream storage, which has been poo-pooed in the past, but there's something we should probably look forward to in the future, maybe finding some grant funding to do that, or low-interest loans, and also with regard to just putting on the website gray water systems and how people in this community can find out more information about gray water, because gray water be extremely useful in the summertime with regard to watering landscaping. And as we know, in the summer, landscaping uses up probably 40% or more of the water that we use in this community. And if people just started getting ahead of that by implementing gray water systems, I know there's people in this community that already have them that would be welcome to have little workshops on that. And that's something I feel that we should do in the future. But like I said, everything, we need to address that in this community and not just feel that and that this particular water facility that we have is going to solve all our problems. We need to be proactive and forward-looking in what we can do in this community to be a model community as to how to move forward with regard to water in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Well said. Vice President Behringer?
You were talking about water next month, and I saw an email recently about Alex Handler and that group. Can we target them for next month, or what can we do to move that process forward?
I believe so. I sent Alex Handler an email earlier in February, and I did not get a response. And so my second email, if the board recalls, was a little more assertive, asking him to get us some information that we want to get this before the board and for the public. I got a call from Alex last night, and I listened to the voicemail and didn't get a chance to get back to him today, but he will have us by the end of next week, all the preliminary data. And then what I would recommend from that point is getting the budget committee together and getting on a conference call with him, and whether that's a standing meeting, we can agendize it and include the public or whatever the board wants to do. But we need to get this moving forward. And if you recall, Alex had a lot of the information already from previous rate studies, but he apologized to the board and apologized to me for not having the information to us sooner. But it's on his high priority list right now, and I anticipate getting the preliminary information from him by the end of next week. I will follow through tomorrow again or this weekend and remind him that I did talk to the board and that we expect to have that by the end of next week. So,
thank you. And may I suggest that we either get Dean's pitch and then the public comment, or public comment first, your choice.
I was actually going to ask the board if they had a preference, whether you want to go on
I'd prefer to hear Dean,
okay.
frankly.
If there's no objection.
Then that kind of completes the whole agenda issue.
Mr. Flores, would you come and share what's going on with your efforts with the district? Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Let me just proceed through this, hopefully, somewhat quickly. First and foremost, the legislative bill deadline was Friday, so there is a slew of about 3,000 bills that will either affect the district or not, but I will have a report back to the board in a couple of weeks. And I think it would be good if the board had a small committee of one or two to circle bills of interest, and to have me track those and to keep you informed on how those are going. And the reason those are important is, as you just heard Mr. Farmer mention, there's a lot of water conservation mandates coming from Sacramento that will affect the district, and I want to make sure we tag all of those, good or bad. That will be hopefully helpful to the board as you start to think about kind of what's coming. Included in that, as you know, is a statewide initiative on rainwater rooftop systems that the voters will be voting on. It has a lot of impact as well statewide, but also here, because it is a cost item, and it will be interesting to see how this community reacts to that. In terms of that report, meaning the bills, I was hoping that the board would be able to go through the slew of bills that are coming, prioritize them, and then I would like to entertain, or the board to entertain, a community forum that Mr. Farmer had mentioned a couple of meetings ago, and we can actually have that forum on these bills and other matters pending in Sacramento. So I would include those bills as prioritized by the board, and kind of how to track them, why those are important, how they affect the district, why are we even following these types of things. I think it would be a good thing for the community to participate in as well, for those who are interested. And I do know we're working on a date with Mr. Farmer. I think we should do, if possible, an evening meeting, and I'd be available for that, so I'll just leave it to the board for that. On the legislative front as well, I do want to speak a bit to the article that Mr. Farmer pointed to. A big debate in Sacramento. You should keep your eye on it, on water storage. This is the $2.7 billion that was allocated nearly 6 years ago, something of that sort, that is still in limbo. The Water Commission looked at all of the proposals, both above ground and below ground storage, and said no to all of them. So there's going to be a few oversight hearings, I understand, in Sacramento starting next week. The simple question is, why can't we get the money out? It's there are proposals here, and the question will be whether they reformulate those. So I will obviously keep the board informed. We can also make that part of the forum as well, some of the impacts. I'd like to report on 3 issues. The state parks access issue. As you know, we have been trying to move state parks to a final answer. We did get a lot of correspondence with the staff in Sacramento, and I know that the GM, your general manager, got reports from this end, and apparently it is moving towards a solution. But they've been saying this for a while, but at least now we have this on writing. So in some sense, there is some resolution to this, and it is in legal. It's just a question of trying to get this completed. And I know that GM Gruber has been talking to Dan, who's the local person. We've been talking to Dan's boss in Sacramento, and hopefully we'll get an answer pretty soon on this. They know it is a matter of urgency. So. I do want to turn my attention to the water rights issue as well. Had an opportunity to talk to Scott McFarland personally in Sacramento. He was a little reticent about sending language that we had sent him to your local folks at the county. He promised that he would make a call to that county. And Madam Chair, thank you for providing me with the name of the person for Scott to call. As to this time, I'm not sure he has called or not. So my guess is that his report to me was that he was halfway done. The goal for him was to look at the numbers on a weekly basis versus a monthly basis. The reason for that is you get a better average and yield, and that took a little time. And as you know, Scott and the Water Rights Division has a lot of work in front of it. Things that have come before our project is this little thing called the Water Fix that the governor is debating now and trying to figure out how to do that. So I know they got a lot of staff taken for that particular project, the Water Fix, and I do know that Scott is working pretty diligently. He actually showed me about half of the work, and I know hopefully he was going to share it with the county. I do know that we need that recognition from the state to the county in order to proceed with the regular coastal permit, and I did emphasize that, so hopefully we'll get a call and an answer on that. Just a couple of other items. Obviously, CAL FIRE funds. We've been having a little discussion about new cap-and-trade dollars being available. I know that the general manager and fire folks have been talking about the eligibility for this area. I would definitely see if we are eligible to try to participate in that. And then 2 other items. The Coastal Commission obviously was here. They had their meeting. It was a good meeting. But nothing really pertinent to our particular issue. And I know, Madam Chair, you've had some discussions with the board as well, and I think that's positive. I would say that the Water Board itself is now beginning to talk about moving into this next stage. You just mentioned of the water system that is operational or not. And it's pretty clear to me that we're going to hit that stage pretty quickly, and that there's going to be, new drought regulations coming down the pike. And so I think we're going to be right back where we were in 2015 or something of that, 14 and 15. Last item of importance is, as you know, we have been looking and dealing with the iBank in Sacramento. Quite a lot of activity there in terms of getting a refi of an inexpensive coupon that the board is currently dealing with. The goal there is to reduce the coupon substantially, freeing up hopefully the dollars necessary for the board to consider what you're going to be doing moving forward. But I guess the point on that is we will need a Sacramento meeting with the iBank and their staff. I believe the GM has provided me now with most of the pieces. I've asked the GM not to organize it in a way that we couldn't, in some way, have a conversation with our banker, which would be the state. They may want certain parts, may not want certain parts. So I think us trying to package it precisely would not lead to a good conclusion. They may see things that they would like to finance in terms of the wastewater side of this that may stand alone from any other part of this. And the goal there, obviously, is to reduce the interest rate. We have a very good preliminary meeting with them. It sounds very promising, and hopefully when we get back to the board next meeting, we'll have made some great progress. And I think that's basically it. I'll take any questions.
I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the iBank, which is a state infrastructure bank, and technical financial talk to try to get a refinance on the big loan that we got in a hurry for the emergency water supply system. And I think that meeting did go quite well, and reducing that interest rate, which is 4.11, to something closer to 1% would make a big difference financially. So I think it's a worthy goal for us to be pursuing, and I'm glad that you've gotten us those meetings. Just tearing off the Coastal Commission being here, Director Pearson and I had lunch with Executive Director Ainsworth the Friday before he skedaddled out of town, and I think that was a very good meeting. And I did bring up the state parks right of entry issue, and he said if there was anything that he could do to be helpful. And I just didn't know enough about the history, so I didn't go into too much detail, but I wanted to be able to follow up with him and let him know kind of what has been happening. So if you could just get me kind of a synopsis, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Because I think when the executive director of Coastal says we'd like to help, you take them up on that.
It's always a rare statement from Coastal.
Yeah.
Normally it's we should be looking at, work with us, or we're trying to find a path. So I think that's a
less
positive.
rare with Executive Director Ainsworth, hopefully. It seems to me.
He's a good director. Good director.
All right. Thank you very much for your report. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Flores, the fact that he mentioned wastewater, kind of in conjunction with perhaps finding some type of low-interest loan or a grant, because our wastewater facility is in definite need of upgrade. And it's nice to know that there's a potential for that in the future, because right now the funds are not really available through the district itself. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Director Farmer, just to make it clear, so the board understands, the iBank offered that as something that would be more enticing to them, because I think they'd like to see new and renewed, and so I think the wastewater treatment came at the right time. So I think it was very good that we could kind of pull that into the financing.
Thank you.
Just really quickly on a few things from Senator Flores' comments. So I just want to thank Senator Flores. We do talk weekly, and I know it's not easy sometimes with his schedule and my schedule, but we both are committed to it. With regards to the 3,000 bills, something the board may want to consider in other districts and cities do this is just the appointment of what they call a legislative committee, and I could work with District Council and Senator Flores on the verbiage for that legislator. But then it becomes more broad, and you could also include items of through Assembly bills and Senate bills, the CSDA, Aqua. Association of California Water Agencies that we're members of. So something along the lines of a legislative committee might be a good idea. Also, as we were talking about some of those 3,000 bills, specifically relating to the rooftop collection system, something the board may want to consider, and I know this has been near and dear to Madam President's heart, is as we move forward in the budget process, we may want to consider our conservation program and really taking it more seriously with regards to possibly rebates for people within the community. So that's just something to consider as we move forward on the budgeting process, because we've been, and it's really resource driven, but we've had light conservation budgets, if you will, in the past. So maybe that's something that we should consider taking a more serious and funding that. The right of entry, I have a really good relationship with Dan Fallett, the superintendent up at Hearst Castle, and I believe that Dan and I, Senator Flores is absolutely right, that we can come to some kind of agreement on the right of entry. The iBank, I've really enjoyed putting this information together. I hope I haven't inundated the board with too much, but I think it's the possibility of this is really exciting. And so I'll continue to flood everybody with a bunch of information, and then iBank can decide what they want to use. And then finally, I apologize for not being able to meet with Jack Ainsworth, but I do plan on reaching out to him again and sitting down with him and just developing that relationship with him and talking about our project, but also some of the concerns that have been raised today. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. And Mr. Farmer, I'll work with you to get that date on the calendar.
Sounds good. Thanks very much.
Anybody else have any? All right. We do have some comments on the properties list. Was there anything that you wanted to state about that before we have the public comment, or do you want to?
No, Madam President.
Other than to those ones, we did. This is a follow up to what the board asked us to do. It's kind of in a different format than you'll see other than the APN. But really, the go-to person that I would ask if you have any questions, any detailed questions, would really be Monique, because she's much more familiar with CIS than I am, which is our parcel management program, and she put this list together. And I think between her and I, we can answer any questions that you have. I think at some point in time, other than what the Historical Society would be asking for or requesting, and that's regarding our Center Street piece of property and the old schoolhouse, and the possibility of relocating it over there, which I support, would be to maybe direct staff to go back and again, maybe work with one or two board members specifically on pieces of property that you may want us to surplus. I know that was a discussion that the board had at one time when we were considering buying the library, and it seemed to be a source of revenue that we could possibly use to help purchase that library. But there's some other ideas that I have with some monies that possibly could be generated from CCSD properties. There's not a lot of them, but there are possibly some that could be surplused, and the revenue generated could be used for some other things. So that's really a policy decision, and we're here just to support what the board wants to do. So I would ask that directors just kind of listen during the comments, speak with the understanding that we may be giving board direction to the staff on dealing with these properties and maybe any potential things that are raised.
Can we do that today, or is this?
We can give staff direction.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Correct? Okay. Seeing a nod from Mr. Carmel. Okay. You'll each have 3 minutes, and we're going to start with Laurel Stewart, followed by Debbie Soto.
What I'd like to establish right at the beginning is, if I just make a brief introduction of the speakers who are going to follow me, their purpose, could I use the balance of my time to follow up with just a couple other statements?
Like in order, like a start and end?
Yeah, thank you.
That's fine.
Okay. I am Laurel Stewart, and I am a secretary and officer on the board of the Cambria Historical Society. I'm also chair of a committee and project manager for moving the 1881 Santa Rosa Schoolhouse from its current home up the street. The Lions Club has sold their property, and they've gift deeded the schoolhouse to the Historical Society for our care. For 54 years, they've provided it refuge. Now it's our turn. I'm not here today speaking for the Cambria Historical Society Board, but what I'm seeking to do is to facilitate a presentation by a growing number of community members who have a vision for the schoolhouse relocation, which they would like the district to seriously consider. Now, this obviously will come as a surprise to some of you. In the recent past, our board president has mentioned the possibility of moving the schoolhouse to the Pocket Park at the intersection of Center and Bridge. But on your properties list is another parcel and representatives of several pioneer and established families whose names many of you will recognize: Phelan, Fiscalini, Fitzhugh, Gomez, Harris, Soto. They would like to petition your board and present their vision. And again, I'd like to do a little follow-up after they've spoken. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Debbie, do you have a particular order? Otherwise, we'll have Debbie Soto followed by Barbara Fiscalini. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Debbie Soto, and I'm here to talk about the relocation of the 1881 Santa Rosa Schoolhouse. The Historical Society has a committee set up to find property to move the historic one-room Santa Rosa School so it can be saved and restored to its former glory. The Molinari family donated this building in 1964 to save it for a museum. It was then placed on Lions Club property. Because this property just sold, we have less than 2 years to move the school building to a permanent site, or we will lose it forever. There are many people in our community who are concerned and want to see the Santa Rosa School preserved. Since last Friday, our committee has asked a few of the pioneer families where they want to see the schoolhouse moved to. In the last few days, we have received these letters, which we have copied to you, and I will be giving you copies of these letters. As you read these letters, you will see and feel the passion of these descendants of pioneer families to preserve the Santa Rosa Schoolhouse. All these letters ask your permission to place the school in the meadow at the intersection of Santa Rosa Creek and Main Street, Cambria, which was the former dog park. The dog park has recently been evacuated, and a few trees remain, which make it an ideal setting for the school building. This cherished relic should be returned to open space and near the creek which bears its name, and not crowded in the middle of town between commercial buildings. With the passage of time, most of all these one-room schools in our area have been destroyed, burned, torn down, or moved. We have a rare opportunity to save this 137-year-old building and place it in a serene meadow at the edge of Cambria for future generations to enjoy and appreciate its history. We should not forget that the community and town of Cambria has been greatly blessed by the generous land donations of Lucy Fiscalini, where the Veteran Memorial Building, which we are in, stands, and also the land at the Catholic Church. Many Fiscalini children attended the Santa Rosa School. My mother, Kathleen Fiscalini, who is here today, was in the last 8th grade graduation class of 1951 before the school closed in 1952. Please give careful and thoughtful consideration to locating such an important historical building on this open space at the intersection of Santa Rosa Creek Road and Main Street, Cambria. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. If I could follow up either now with another 3 minutes. I have another letter of someone who could not be here who wanted their letter.
Well, let's get through the rest of these, and then we'll poll the board majority. Barbara Fiscalini.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. You can provide the letters to Ms. Madrid here at the end of the table. Barbara Fiscalini, followed by Catherine Fiscalini Gerhardt. Welcome.
Okay, this letter is to CCSD.
Sorry, you can have 3 minutes and not no minutes. There you go.
CCSD board members from Alfred and Barbara Fiscalini. We understand that the Santa Rosa Schoolhouse needs a new home. We would love to see the schoolhouse move to the pasture where the dog park used to be. The pasture is open and the school would be a very visible there rather than crowded on a space in town. The pastoral scene of the school in the field will be a welcoming sight as we drive into town. It would be similar to the schoolhouse at San Simeon. My husband Alfred attended the school at Santa Rosa for 8 years, as did his father and numerous aunts and uncles, cousins, and siblings. If feasible, we would hope you will give the parcel high priority to consider. It would be a beautiful site, S-I-T-E, and site, S-I-G-H-T. And then I have another letter from Patricia Knock Marlowe. She's a direct descendant from the Phelan family. They donated land for the first church in Cambria, the Santa Rosa Chapel, in 1870. Placing the old Santa Rosa schoolhouse in the pastoral setting would be fitting. Its former home was open creekside terrain. In my memory, quite pleasing. Having attended the one-room schoolhouse in my early age, I remember the solitude and the freedom of the open fields. My mother, Margaret Knock, was a teacher, custodian, groundkeeper, and bus driver. I have many fond memories. Placing the structure in an open field at the entrance to Cambria by Highway 1 would be dramatic, comparable to the San Simeon Schoolhouse at the opposite end of Cambria-San Simeon Highway corridor. Sincerely, Patricia Knock Marlowe.
Thank you very much for your comments. Kathleen Fiscalini Gerhardt, followed by Crosby Swartz. Welcome.
It's Kathleen Gerhardt. My grandfather, Charles Fiscalini, arrived here from Switzerland in 1887. He bought a ranch in Santa Rosa Creek around the 1900s. All 7 children attended the Santa Rosa School. He also bought the Swiss Hotel in Cambria in 1902. It later burned down. My grandfather's sister bought the Cambria Ranch, and later they donated land to the Vets Building and Catholic Church. I attended the Santa Rosa grade school through the 8th grade. I graduated in 1951, the last graduating class. My 2 younger brothers attended until 1952 when it closed. My older brother graduated also. My father attended the school and was a trustee for years. The Santa Rosa School has always been a blessing to me. I miss not seeing the school at its first location, as it had such good memories. I would love to see it move to the location of the former dog park, looking up Santa Rosa Creek Road, where we can all enjoy seeing it as we drive by. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Crosby Swartz.
Madam President, I may be out of order here. My comment was just a question on the general manager's report.
This is the time to do that also.
Regarding the month when he was going to bring forward his recommendations, but he's corrected that now from November to March, and so I'm happy.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we're taking that's it's all good. Laurel?
Yeah. They've asked me to read a short letter, but I think you've got the picture, so I won't be doing that. This property, the schoolhouse used to be out by on Santa Rosa Creek Road near where Kathy and Steve Brody live. So they're seeing this as similar in feel, in texture to where it used to be. It was purchased by the CCSD under the previous general manager, and when you look at the assessed value of $620,000 for 2005-2006, you realize that was a pretty substantial acquisition, and it was bought for the purpose of building an office for the CCSD, and as I understand it, there's no plan or nor possibility of building an office on that space in the near future financially. It is pretty heavily encumbered. There a covenant agreement and restrictions were recorded with county in March of 2005, composed by the seller and the purchaser, presumably agreeing on these covenants and restrictions, but they can be read in various different ways, and I know that this group would like you to very seriously consider their vision. So So thank you very much. I think that's it.
Thank you for your comments. What is the will of the board at this point in terms of any direction to staff on working with the Historical Society to help them find a place to relocate that may be a property that we have for surplus that we're not using for a water tank or some other public use that we need it for, obviously? Is there any...
Is this the
Director
jurisdiction of the PROS committee? Should we refer this to them for their consideration before we act on it, or?
We could definitely go that direction. I mean, it's one of the ways to begin to consider it, since they are parks and open space. I think this is appropriate.
Is that a floodplain area there where the dog park used to be?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
The elevation's significantly higher than the creek. If you walk to the back of the property and you look down, the creek is pretty good ways down there. Now, anything's possible, but no, I don't think it's designated as a flood area.
It's designated public facilities. It's not in the floodplain, as is the Pocket Park, and FEMA would very likely not allow anything on the Pocket Park.
You're talking about the one at Center?
Right, the one that we were previously looking at. We'd, have to hire a civil engineer, get a survey for the flood levels, and Glenn Marshall of Public Works is saying not feasible.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Director Farmer?
I just want to say that just thinking of the aesthetics of this community and driving down, I have to say this much, having lived here now for 31 years, every time I drive down Main Street coming into town, and I think about what a magical place this is, just to live here and be in a different time and space. It just does something for your frame of mind and how you feel about life and people and Mother Nature. And I think having that schoolhouse right there, very similar to the one up in San Simeon, it just kind of puts a glow on my body to think of it being located in that spot as an entranceway to the town, for us locals, but especially for the tourists. And since tourism is the main engine that keeps this town going, just one more item that would add to that sounds good to me. And I do want to say this much also, having been a longtime volunteer at the Historical Museum, I have a real affection for anything that has to do with the history of this community. And so I'm 2 thumbs up, and I guess we could ask Vice President Beringer, since he lives across the street from where this schoolhouse could be relocated, how he feels about this.
I'll recuse myself. I live within 500 feet of the property.
Right, so he wouldn't be eligible to make a decision on it.
He also was the seller of the property and holds the covenant, recorded the covenant with the restrictions.
All right. Is the will of the board, do I have a consensus that we refer this to PROS, to have PROS work, PROS committee? And now, did anybody come from PROS? Because I know we were supposed to have a presentation on the board goals.
No, Madam President. Chairman Niffen thought the meeting was at 12:30, and it's a work conflict, but he did extend an invitation to the rest of the PROS commissioners, so I would be more than happy on that agenda item to just go over the goals of PROS, but no, there's no representation from PROS here today.
Okay. So do I have a consensus to give board direction? Because I don't want to be doing this just because I say so. This is an important... Director Wharton? Okay to refer to PROS? Okay. Then I think that's Mr. Gruber. And Vice President Beringer, you're recusing? Okay. So we do have direction to staff to bring this to PROS. And if, Ms. Stewart, you would coordinate with the general manager and PROS.
And I'll put it on the March, it's a first Tuesday, just for any folks that may want to attend. It's the first Tuesday of every month. Right over here in the Veterans Hall, this side room, and I'll make sure that it gets put on the agenda.
And maybe get copies of the letter to the PROS.
Absolutely, if it's okay with you folks, if you're available to come and yes, ma'am, at 10 o'clock, and we'll contact you. District Clerk's making notes, but we'll agendize this as a presentation and then discussion item. So the Pros Commission can fully understand everything that's being proposed. And then what we'll do is put it back, if their recommendation is to support it, then we'll put it back on the agenda for the board for their consideration in April, unless it warrants a special board meeting for time constraints and things like that, which I would leave up to the board president and the vice president.
So it's a process that the next step in the process is to work with pros.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming. Thank you. All right. We are on to the next agenda item, which I believe is not the finance manager's report, but the fire chief's report. Yes?
Madam President.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Director Wharton.
I heard Laurel kind of give a deadline. What's the deadline on the 2? When's the 2 years?
2 years.
When's the clock ticking on that?
February 6, 2020.
Thank you for the time frame.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We got a water main, a sewer main. That's right.
Chief Hollingsworth. Doing your homework at the last minute, I see. Which something you never do, as far as I can tell.
It's the beauty of having a laptop. I can work from anywhere. I guess I'm done.
No, you're not done. Sorry,
Okay.
sir.
There were a total of 85 responses or incident responses for our agency for the month of January. If you take a quick moment and look at the incident statistics sheet, I made a few changes to this to make it a little bit more understandable and true to form in regards to looking at the numbers. There has been some confusion about what some of those reference. And so any incident wherein we see a patient should be registered as an emergency medical incident, whether it's a vehicle accident, cliff rescue, water rescue, doesn't matter. So you'll see those all listed under medical, and then it further breaks down those numbers and quantifies them in the other categories, so you know how they actually break down. But that's there, and then we've included you've put in a request for the reference to how many local versus non-local, and that's actually committed to this report now, and that can be there for all future reference. We're just a little bit over a third of the way done with all the hydrant maintenance for the community. This is an exhaustive process, as you are well aware, and it takes quite a while to get one of them done. And the personnel commitment to do so is pretty significant, but we're almost at 130 right now, so that's pretty good. And we're not finding any radical problems. There are minor issues, caps that need to be replaced, risers that may need to be put in to extend them out of areas where there've been some flooding or things like that. But everything's been functional so far. A big thank you to the Cambria Community Council. We've taken possession of our new rescue boat, which was purchased under a local grant through them. Boat, trailer, motor, it's all been, it's got delivered to the station the other day. There's going to be some outfitting that needs to be done on it, and they've already started training on the boat. It's a little bit different. It's designed differently. It's a little bit faster and smoother and ride, but we're very happy that we're able to retire the one that's fairly old at this point. We're in the middle of a testing process for reserve firefighters. We had 7 very qualified applicants go through the process yesterday. And again, just as a reminder, these are not new positions. These are replacing ones that are vacant through attrition. And they all passed both the written and the physical agilities, and they're going to be going to oral testing in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully in the next couple of months, they'll be able to get through our academy, which we do through our department, and they'll be able to be on the floor and working. We are in the beginning processes for weed abatement. That's kind of a nasty word for some people, and yet it's really important for the continued fire safety of our community. We are expanding that a little bit more this year and pushing out and adopting a little bit more stringent guidelines, but nothing radical. But it is real important that we all realize that that's something that is a continuous process, even though it's only measured and evaluated or inspected typically once a year. You need to maintain your property throughout the entire year. There is a fairly significant, the general manager indicated a big CERT training that's happening on the 24th of this month. This is something that they're going to be doing on a little bit more regular basis for insurance purposes, but to really give them a kind of a more global outlook and approach as to how they would help and plug into emergencies that might help in this community. So you're going to see them possibly down at the Pine Dorado grounds going through some various limited search and rescue and how to shut off gas meters and all those kinds of things that somebody in the CERT capacity is very trained and capable of doing at the direction of the fire department. And then lastly, I just wanted to stress that the Fire Safe Focus Group is, a number of you were at the meeting. They were hosting these town hall meetings. We had the first one January 31st, and that was a presentation by Sandra Miller, who wrote the book Fire Outside My Window, and she had survived the large cedar fire down in San Diego a few years ago. A very compelling discussion she had. It was very well attended. This room was pretty packed, and we have 3 more of those planned right now with different focuses, whether it's prep and go bags, how do we harden our own homes, or how do we actually make efforts within our own community to make a more fire safe community. The dates for those are February 27th, March 27th, and April 24th. If you want to mark your calendars, they'll all be held here. Again, with a little bit of a different focus on each one, and they're having numerous people from the entire county attending those. So real happy to be able to position to be able to host that. And I'm over to you for any questions.
Director Barron?
Great job, Chief.
Vice President Berenger?
Okay, real quick,
Yes, sir.
2 questions. One is, it's not so much for you, but I want to follow up on the general manager's report while we were still here. There was a bunch of events here at the Vets Hall, and you said you had how many? Anyway, a bunch of them. And I'm wondering if we're charging for those. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that someone had an article in the paper about the Jocelyn Center, and the Jocelyn Center needs revenue for things like weddings and so on and so forth. So I want to make sure that we're competitive there, so that we're not stealing their business because we're giving free resources to people. And also, when we have events like this, I'm sure we're a community. We're probably donating the Vets Hall for that kind of stuff. But anytime we can get cost recovery, especially from people out of town, I think we should do so as much as possible. And that's just a comment, and we should make a look at that, make sure we're getting funds for this and not competing so much with the Jocelyn Center. And additionally, I believe you were in back there and you were working hard. Mm-hmm. And when you're here because you would be someplace else anyway. So the public comment that was made before, I appreciate you being here. And I know that if you wouldn't walk up to the podium, it was because you had a higher priority and you left. Yes, so sir. You're always working, whether you're here or in your office. So I appreciate you being here.
That was a thought I had too about the renting of the Vets Hall, that it would be nice to see the revenue that was generated, not just the number of events. It would be helpful, like having an income statement each month would be helpful. The other thing that I wanted to raise is on the CERT. Can you please just unacronymize that, please?
I'm sorry.
What does it stand for?
It's Community Emergency Response Team. And anybody in this business or in law enforcement, you use lots of shortened abbreviations, 10 codes, radio things, and it's like a different language. So if I ever do that and don't explain it, please
Community
let me know.
Emergency Response Team, and it's citizens. So if there's a citizen that wants to become trained to what to do in an emergency.
Absolutely. And we host those. It's led by 3 gentlemen here in the community. We're one of the most aggressive CERT organizations in the county. Others actually look to Cambria for how to develop it in their communities. We're proud that we have hundreds of members on that team, and there's usually at least one training every year. So if you're interested in doing that, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll put you in contact with the right person. They'll probably be having another training later this year.
And the times and dates of those workshops, and then I do have 2 other questions.
For the town hall meetings?
Are they posted somewhere on the website, or is it out there in the public somewhere so people know?
I can talk to Haley at the office and make sure they're put up there.
Okay,
yes.
that would be great. Director Wharton, followed by Director Pearson.
So, you brought up the starting of the weed abatement, and what about, and this goes back to when we were trying to fill the vacant director position. One of the candidates had mentioned 20-foot stumps, trees that get knocked down. Well, in my neighborhood at Spencer and Bradford, there was a tree that was recently taken down, and now the dead wood is just stacked. Mm-hmm. A dead tree vertical is still a dead tree horizontal. What are we doing anything to reduce that fuel load on tree?
Yes, this year there's going to be a small amendment to the process wherein if there's any dead tree material on the ground, you're going to have to pull it and remove it. Historically, there has been a number of efforts to leave a certain amount of that product because anything over about 12 inches in diameter is considered a 100-hour fuel or longer, and that just means it takes a long time for it to ignite. It's not that it won't burn, and it's not that it won't put off a lot of heat and fire. It just takes a fast-moving fire that goes through the grass is probably not going to ignite that, and that was the philosophy at the time. We're obviously very aware and cognizant of the dangers and fire loading in the community, and getting that stuff off the properties is critical, so it's been a focus of mine that's going to change. So that is going to be written and identified in the notice that goes out for the hazard mitigation. And then we've also been talking with legal counsel, Mr. Hirsch, a while back in regards to expanding this to actually incorporating a mandatory removal of standing dead trees. Now, there may be some value to some of those. You talked to people in green space and the forest committee that a lot of animals like to live there, and we maybe don't want to decimate everything, but removing a good percentage of them would be fairly healthy for the rest of the forest. So there's some evaluation of that process as well.
Director, follow-up?
I think that people like green space and the forest committee, et cetera, should be considered very, very strongly. And yes. I know Director Farmer would be also supportive of keeping a lot of this material available for the animals in the understory. A forest really lives down there.
And there is a lot of value to it. We just need to balance those two things. So we're absolutely not advocating for clear-cutting things or removing everything. That's not the case. But if we can remove some of the fuel, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Director Pearson?
Two things. First, the weed abatement is a resolution by the board. Is that correct that we have to do every year?
You'll pass coming up probably in March or April. I would have to go let back and look at the calendar. We had a planning meeting for this a little while ago. There's a whole calendar of events that has to occur, and one of those is passing an ordinance enforcing the health and safety code, which we use to actually provide the service for the community.
Good. The other is I would really like to thank the chief and his department. I spent a day with a crew there, and it was a terrific day. I would highly recommend that all of you give it a shot.
Did you get to ride in the truck?
Oh yes, lots of times. We did a lot of different exercises, and I got to see a lot of what they do and how they do it and stuff, and it was very, very instructive. Very instructive.
And I'm happy to say, I've talked to a number of you about that. You're all interested in doing it. It's just a matter of scheduling, and we're happy to do it.
I want to ride on the new boat.
We can make that happen. It's not a problem.
Okay. Thank you very much for your report. I don't see any other comments. All right. Board member reports. Does anyone have anything from the previous month from meetings or meetings they've attended that they would like to report? Director Pearson.
We had kind of a meeting of the ad hoc fire department, but I think it's going to be mostly covered in item number 6 in the regular business, so we'll cover it then.
Vice President Berenger.
Okay, the one that was of significance was yesterday. The NCAC meeting was probably one of the longest NCAA meetings I've attended. I usually leave before the land use because we don't have land use authority, but we did have an item on the agenda about the Cambria Community Services District required MUF following the issuance of emergency permit for wet weather preparedness, and that was approved, although the committee doesn't like to approve permits after the work is already done. Another thing that was on the agenda itself was the growth management ordinance. It has been extended by the county to 2021, so it's not just 2 years. It's now going to be until 2021 with a 0% growth rate, and that was endorsed by the committee. As you know, we can always go prior to that. However, a key to change making that growth management change is the resource management document, which is due next year, and based upon that, we need to have enough resources to make things happen. So that was important. There was a couple of Verizon Wireless applications that were approved, a minor use permit to remodel an existing residence, and normally I'm not involved in that. I was kind of interested to see that there was a MUP that is required. A minor use permit is required for a homestay. So an existing single-family residence, and if you want a homestay, you can get a MUP, a minor use permit. Essentially, you're renting one of your rooms. You're resident there, and I think that's a right that people should have. So anyway, those are the salient points.
Thank you. That's useful information. I appreciate that report. Director Farmer.
So I assume these are also liaison. Okay. So I have a couple of reports. First off, from the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, they're actually discussing implementing a scholarship program for college students that are interested in environmental issues, not just as they relate to the Fiscalini Ranch, but just in general. And right now they're talking with legal counsel to determine if, in fact, it's within their charter to be able to do something like that. So stay tuned. It's a really cool idea that they have. Butterfly count at the Monarch Grove on the ranch has dropped this year. It's dropped actually significantly in recent years, probably this year due to the drought, but also perhaps due to the smoke that came up here for a short while from down south, the fires down there. Carlos has also been more involved in removing and just kind of addressing what the fire chief came up with, removal of mainly dead and dying trees along the perimeter of the ranch to remove potential danger to adjacent homes. And then finally, there's going to be this weekend called a night walk, and this is being co-sponsored by the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve and Beautify Cambria, and it's at the south entrance. And this is mainly to educate folks about the value of dark skies. Fewer and fewer communities have the availability to just walk out. I mean, I feel very fortunate where I live. Nobody keeps their lights on. I can just walk out and see all the stars. And it's very soothing to do that. It's really good for your mental and emotional well-being. So this night walk is being sponsored to kind of encourage people to not leave their lights on at night. Just to let you know, this event, it filled up really quickly. People having a lot of interest in that, and so there's going to be another one soon. With regard to the Forest Committee, I was able to meet with the Crosby and Laura Swartz at their home for a while, and we discussed some of the usual items, the update of their very attractive website, CambryForestCommittee.org, I believe, something like that. They should update me on that. Also, once again, addressing the need for a forest manager. They also have this, finally was able to bring to you this attractive trifold that they have, that is available mainly at the kiosk at the Cambria Historic Museum. And it just kind of shows us the benefits of the forest, as we may be aware of. The native Monterey pine forest here is only one of 3 forests in the entire United States mainland. There's a couple that are on islands off the coast here, but so that's something very special once again with regard to the community of Cambria. Also, like I said, it's kind of discusses the pine forest, the benefits of the forest, and also on the back, the life cycle of the Monterey pine. So like I say, you can pick one up right there at the kiosk at the Historical Museum. And then also, we discussed a more complete overview of where potential build-out could be taking place that in the near future or distant future that could do significant harm to the open space here in the community, especially the forested areas where the wildlife, call our residents and call home. And folks might be interested, the greatest impact, and I might have mentioned this in the past, but the greatest impact, once again, by the way, here's a little map of the various areas, not that you can see it, the various areas here in town that are going to be mostly affected. And Lodge Hill, 445 developable parcels are on Lodge Hill, where water meters could be issued. So for those of us that live on Lodge Hill or just anywhere in town, you might consider how that's going to impact traffic, impact more homes, more light, and less, like I say, less quiet, all of that in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Farmer. I briefly referred to the lunch that we had with Jack Ainsworth of the Executive Director of Coastal Commission. That meeting did go quite well. I think Director Pearson and I were both walked away feeling pretty confident that we were building a good relationship with the executive director. Also, yesterday I attended a rally that was put on by Congressman Salud Carbajal to oppose the potential of oil drilling off the coast. And since this board had passed and approved to send a letter of comment when this initially was brought forward through an executive order from President Trump, I presented that letter to Mr. Carbajal in person, and I also presented him with the resolution and letter that we had written and approved back in 2014 that is an anti-fracking resolution and letter that we had passed in 2014. It was a fairly well-attended rally, and thought it was a good gesture in terms of making sure that we're making nice with Congressman Carbajal and his office. So I was glad to be there. And it was not very cold, fortunately. I don't think that I have anything further. Is there any other directors that have board member reports? Well, then, okay. On that, then we can move on to the consent agenda. These are matters to be approved in one motion. Is there anybody that would like to pull any of these items for questions?
I don't necessarily want to pull any items, but I always try to keep people updated on how much is being spent on the emergency water facility, sustainable water facility, advanced water treatment facility, whatever name we're using at this time. So I just want to let folks know that in some fashion, less money has been spent this year, in the month of January, although we still have $10,000 being spent with Abalone Coastal Analytics on well monitoring. And we also had a little over $5,000 spent for biological well monitoring. There's a few other small items. However, when you get to the end of the expenditure report, where we see that we've actually made our biannual payment to the bank for principal and interest, each of them being $165,000 and $164,000. So the total biannual payment is $329,000. So the total amount spent for the facility in the month of January was $395,990.16. And as we know at this point in time, the facility is still not operating. It appears that this process is slowly moving forward, but just an update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Therefore, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Vice President Behringer, seconded by Director Pearson. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Vice President Behringer?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
Aye.
President Rice?
Aye. Thank you. Wow, that was good. 2 minutes. Can we take a break, 5-minute break? Is that okay? Okay, 5-minute break, so we'll come back at 10 minutes until the hour. Thank you. All right, thank you for a little bit of a break there. And we're going to go into regular business, item 6, and the first one, 6A. Director Pearson?
I would have a request to move 6E to the front because we have an elderly gentleman who's here to make a comment on that one, and I'd like to allow him to do that.
You know, not only would I support 6E being first, but perhaps we go to 6C next.
So go
E, C, and then start at the top.
And may I
That
make
way,
one-
I think we're going to get the people that are concerned about these issues.
All right, as long as you beat me
What are
over
your
the head
thoughts?
if I forget.
May I make one more
Yes.
suggestion, if it's okay with the board? Since we don't have a pros representative here, could we take A and just move it to next
Right.
month?
We definitely will do that as we
thank
go
you.
forward. Let's start though with E, and I agree, and not just. I consider Mr. Topping to be a Cambrian emeritu in terms of his expertise in emergency services. I definitely, in deference to his experience, let's do 6E first, unless there's objection. Okay.
Okay, I'll introduce 6E if it's okay with Madam President and
So
board
is everybody
members.
clear where we are on the agenda so that you're not lost? We're doing 6E first.
I just want to speak up for the alphabet. I think alphabet is feeling very intruded upon that we're actually removing the letter A since it's the first letter. That just a joke.
Kind
just
of
a joke.
important to me anyway.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Gruber.
So 6E is discussion and consideration of multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, the mitigation actions, and the input and directions regarding seeking grant funding. I've asked Chief Hollingsworth to go ahead and provide an update on this. I've just read the recommendation, the fiscal impact, and the discussion he'll go over, but really what it means and what we're really eligible for. And again, just a quick caveat, the grant processes are very competitive, and although there's been some significant monies flowing into certain areas that have experienced some catastrophic fires and things like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that this particular area would be eligible for those. But that's what I wanted the chief to talk about a little bit. And then also we've changed the date, but on Wednesday in the afternoon, Director Wharton and Director Pearson and myself and Chief and Ken Topping will be meeting really to discuss the opportunities that may exist because now we have this mitigation plan approved. So with that, Chief, I'll turn it over to you. And
Can I just ask a question procedurally? Sure. So are you looking for direction from the board on this, or is this informational?
I think it's informational at this time. I know that if there is any grant funding that we agree on when we meet and that we think there's a good possibility of pursuing, I think at that time we might want to bring it back to the door. But I think Director Pearson has something to say on that.
Director Pearson?
Yeah, these FEMA grants require us to put up 25%. Okay? So I think we all need to be aware of where it's going. Now, for the notices of intent, we don't have to say we're going to have that money. We don't have to do that until we get to the next phase, which is the grant phase. So it's important that we all understand that it's not 100% grant, it's only a 75% grant.
Got it. Director Wharton?
General Manager, what was the time on that meeting that I'll be attending? I didn't hear the updated
We
time.
moved it, and Chief sent an email out right now. We'll move it till 3 o'clock if that seems to work with everybody on Wednesday. And again, the purpose and intent of the meeting is to discuss any grant opportunities. And if that time there's a consensus reached, then we can bring it back to the board for consideration, since there is matching funds required.
Great. Thank you very much for the sidebar, Chief.
Sure. Most of the questions I believe I would be addressing are things you guys have already just discussed. So just to clarify, we did have a very productive meeting to kind of refine the focus of what we're doing. You'll remember that our recently, that's now fully approved multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. It has a number of mitigation objectives involved in it. Some are rated as a low, medium, or high based on the impact of the community and the potential problems and things like that. It was suggested through people that are very much more in the know than I. People through OES and even through the Cat 5 that helped put this together, that we really focus all of our efforts on the high priority objects or objectives. And there's a couple of different categories where we're really trying to nail down. The first is essentially one-time, very high, very visible benefits to the community. So applying for a grant to automate the water evacuation pump that's at the west end of the community is a one-time benefit, but has a great impact to all the businesses down there. Applying for a grant for a complete seismic evaluation of all CCSD facilities has an immediate benefit. We'll know in regards to infrastructure costs for changes and upgrades and things like that. Some of the more involved projects are really focused on areas similar to the fuel reduction throughout the community. And those are a little bit more difficult to capture and quantify. However, we all know that there's big areas that need to be addressed. So, and one of the suggestions was rather than submit for a $2 million grant to address everything, it would make a lot more sense to apply for 10 or 12 smaller grants and possibly get denied on a few of them, but still have the resources to be able to do some of the others. We all have a little bit of homework going out of that. I know that Director Pearson was going to be talking to the district engineer in regards to some more refined focuses on things like the automation of that water area or the seismic evaluation. We're going to be reaching out to the people with the Fire Safe Council in regards to some of the history they've done in regards to money that they've spent for projects here in the community. The reason that's important is because these notices of intent require us to put down a figure. So if we know that they were able to address 3 square acres and it cost them $20,000 in the grant to do that, it gives us a rough idea on how to fill out that application and create the verbiage to do so. We're not exactly limited to that because once we get approved, in theory, then we have to actually write the concept paper and we can refine it even farther. So, and again, it is a 25% match for the CCSD in the community, and if we get awarded all of them, it's a wonderful problem to have, but it doesn't mean we have to accept them right now. And there will be additional options and opportunities down the road as other disasters, unfortunately, will occur, and Cal OES actually creates these opportunities for local jurisdictions to apply. So that's where we are now. We do have a meeting next week to help refine this further, and we're still trying to do all of this to meet the March 15th deadline.
Thank you. Are there questions for Chief? I do have one public comment. Ken Topping. Thank you for coming, sir. I can't think of anybody that makes me feel safer in this community, frankly.
Well, it's always a pleasure to address this board because of its fine insight into the direction of the community. And I want to congratulate you for having achieved a very difficult thing, and that is the a FEMA approval without a redo at this level. Very often FEMA says, yes, this is fine, but change this, that, and the other on these hazard mitigation plans that are submitted by localities. Yours was approved as was, and it caught us by surprise. At first, I didn't believe the consultant when they said, no, you don't have to re-adopt this. So that was the good news. The process, as you know, is a two-step process. The first is the notice of interest, which is a filling out a form on online, and your staff can do that, and it doesn't require your direct involvement, except that we'd like to know what you think before they do that, so things don't get turned around later on. And they're headed in a direction that they feel comfortable that you would support once the grant application comes before you. And I think that's the key. But there is some actually guidance from FEMA and Cal OES when it comes to how to prepare those grant applications and what they'll accept and what they won't. So it's a multi-step process. It's the grant applications that you would have before you for your formal action before they get submitted. I took the liberty of submitting to President Rice and to Director Behringer, among others, by email, a list of candidate projects which basically are examples of the kind of project which would have a high chance of being approved. And the reason I put it in those terms is that FEMA looks to long-term loss avoidance and risk reduction. In other words, preventing something bad from happening before it by either building it better or moving the activity out of harm's way, etc. The city of Roseville, for example, moved its operations center out of the emergency operations center out of the floodplain, and that type of activity is an example of benefits that actually are repetitive over time. So that's the basic thought, and the other thought that goes with that is your the capital program being a one-time action, or a capital project being a one-time action, and you add that to the multiple benefits, and you get, on the average, 6 to 1 savings for every dollar invested by the latest count for FEMA projects like this. So I welcome your interest on any of these projects, and nothing has to be said in concrete at this point.
Vice President Behringer.
Could I ask a quick question? I know that Cat 5 was a vendor that has done an excellent job, and from time to time we've talked about grant writing, and I don't think that that's our best point. We probably need some. The fire department does well, but if you have recommendations, and I think that it's an opportunity for me to speak to the board, that grant writing might be something we make an investment in. I think the payback is pretty good, and I don't think our staff is so focused on other things that a grant writer would be beneficial. It's just took the opportunity to say so.
Okay.
Director Farmer?
I was just actually going to address that very same issue about finding someone, since that is kind of been this is something that we haven't focused on. Just following up on what Vice President Behringer said, that finding someone to begin writing grant applications for our district and getting somebody on board who becomes more familiar with the issues that the district is in need of funding would be really advantageous at this point in time. So I'm glad we're somehow taking the initiative at this moment.
If I may, I just wanted to add one footnote.
Please.
And that is that contrary to the expectation that most of the money would go into the fire areas, actually the way this process works, HMG, Hazard Mitigation Grant Program money, is statewide, basically, and somewhere around 20-25% of it often goes to other areas besides those that are in the disaster declaration area. So now's the time, and here's your chance.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll make sure to forward that. Did you send that list of projects to the general manager also, or should I forward it on?
Yes. I believe the general manager was copied. It's one of those. It was part of a string of emails that was growing.
I'll make sure that I forward it again, and you can share it with the Emergency Services Committee when you guys meet on that next week.
Yeah, I didn't want to plunge you into detail today.
No, thank you very much. We appreciate the detail that you have put in already.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Anything else from the board? Then I think, Mr. Gruber, you're clear on direction where we're headed on this, right? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate we're on top of and ahead of these things. It's a good change. I like it. All right. Next item is item C. Yes? So we're doing 6C next, and in spite of the alphabet's objections, Mr.
6C,
Gruber.
yes. Thank you, Madam President, board members. Item 6C is discussion and consideration of approval of ballot agreement in favor of measures submitted to voters at the June 5th, 2018 election. Signatories on of same and direct staff with respect to the rebuttal agreement. You'll see that there has been a slight amendment to the original staff report that was submitted, and it's green sheeted in your board packet. And as far as the process goes, District Council Tim Carmel will go ahead and talk a little bit more regarding this particular item, if that's okay with the board.
Thank you, Jerome. Madam President, members of the board, well, you have before you the argument in favor of the special tax ballot measure that you put on the June 6th statewide primary direct election back in early February. And you also have, that was prepared by the Emergency Services Committee in conjunction with Chief Hollingsworth. And then you have some proposed revisions to that document that were prepared by the President that we received this morning, and they're green sheeted. So at this point in time, what we're recommending you do is review the document, make any changes you feel are necessary or appropriate, approve the document, and then determine who the signatories will be. That can be the whole board. That's always beneficial because it shows unanimous support. It can be individual board members. It can be the fire chief. It can be anyone you want. The first 5 signatories are the ones that actually appear on the ballot. And again, it's helpful if it's the board. One other issue we need some direction on. If there's an argument in opposition submitted, the county then will notify us, and then we have an opportunity to submit a rebuttal argument. So that rebuttal argument would be due on March 12th, which is well before our March regular meeting. I'm not recommending a special meeting, but maybe at this point in time you can determine who would write the rebuttal argument, and then also determine who you'd like to sign that document. I know there's a statement in the staff report that I claim I didn't write. David claims I did write it, that I need to correct, and that is you could delegate that chore to the ad hoc committee or to anyone, to any individual, and the whole board could still sign it. You just have to take that action today. In other words, authorize the ad hoc committee to draft the argument and authorize the entire board to sign it upon its completion, if that's the direction you want it to go. So those are the items that we'd like you to address at this point in time, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand the process completely. What we need to do is we need to approve the argument in favor with any potential changes or no changes, and we need to determine who's going to sign the argument, whether it's the full board, the fire chief, the committee, and we need to decide what we're going to do if there's rebuttal. And you're suggesting we don't need a special meeting if we delegate today?
It's entirely within your discretion. You shouldn't feel compelled to have a special meeting unless you want to.
Okay.
It's not legally required.
So we could choose to have a meeting to review it or whatever,
Right.
and approve it and have it signed.
Exactly.
Or we decide today how we're going to do that.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I think I understand. Just a question in the interest of ensuring fairness of process, because this is something being put on not by initiative but by the board. How would opponents know they're supposed to put an argument against?
They listen or attend our meetings.
Okay.
And they react in a way that says, you know what, I'd like to take a stand against that.
Okay.
And I know we've received a fair amount of correspondence, as the board knows, that opposes it. So I don't think it's out in the realm that we're not going to see an argument opposing it. We just don't know yet.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was any specific. Thank you. That's
No, and again, the county will inform us once it gets one, so that we'll have immediate notice and go from there. That's also due on the 28th of February.
Vice President Barricker?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that President Rice, the argument changes that you made are interesting, extensive, And I was going to, at least initially, see if we could revert back to the excellent work that the ad hoc committee did to make it a little bit more expeditious. That's just my goal. And I have a very few little comments, and I'm sure you'll have others. But just to start this off, if it's okay with you.
Well, I was just going to speak to what I had sent to district council this morning, but go ahead.
Right. Well, what I'd like to do is, as an alternative, capture some of the things I think you said, and then, yes, let's talk to that. But if we look at page 103, and you go to the third paragraph, it says your yes vote on measure, and then with the asterisk, will be used exclusively to fund 3 firefighters. And I think that that's what the actual rule says. So I would strike hire and change it with fund. I think that's similar to what you have. And I'm take the additional out because really we're retaining somebody and I don't want to have any confusion. And firefighters, period. That gives us 3 career firefighters, and the actual articles that we approved definitely show why we want to use those, why we want those firefighters to exist. I noticed that the 4 bullets below that, and maybe the ad hoc committee can help me with that. National, federal, and safety standard requirements that may or may not be, but the recommendation, the second bullet, recommendation of County of San Luis Obispo Grand Jury. When I read that, I didn't see any recommendation. There was recommendations about working with the healthcare district and blah, 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 but I didn't see anything that went to require a 4-person engine. And I think that so that we don't get caught by somebody saying, well, wait a minute, the grand jury never did that. I think it's no harm if we cross that out unless someone can show that there was, in fact, a recommendation for a 4-person firefighting. And then in the last paragraph, your yes vote on measure will be used exclusively to fund 3 career firefighters, I think is more clear. And I think those things are short and quick. And I did read your missive, and I will really yield to the ad hoc committee to see which direction they want to go.
And thank you for those comments. And I do want to be very clear on my. I didn't want to come with a draft and catch the committee off guard. Come with a bunch of changes that you had no idea were coming. So in an attempt to let folks know ahead of time that this was happening, that's why I communicated this to the district council. First thing is, I couldn't have done anything unless you guys had done something first that was good to work with. The content is really good. I think that the 2 changes Vice President Berenger just suggested are the 2 most important in my consideration of the entire. There's a couple of clarity issues, and you give an English teacher something and that's going to be published. I'm sorry, it's not red ink because I couldn't print red. But I do want to commend you because it is, seriously, there's no real content changes. It's just some different phrasing that I really I'm not that attached to. I think I think that it comes off better if the first. Okay, so the main sentence that causes me a little bit of heartburn is in the first paragraph. Oh, wait. No, it's in the, hang on, let me find it. There's, in addition to, there's one there's with a steady decline, it's the last sentence in the first paragraph. With a steady decline in volunteerism and an exponential rise in the required entry-level training. I changed that around because the sentence as it was written by the committee doesn't really make sense. between increasing call volume, a steady decline of volunteerism, and an exponential rise in required entry-level training, it doesn't follow. It's not a complete sentence. It just doesn't follow logically the way that it is there. Because it says, between increasing volume and a steady decline of volunteerism and an exponential rise of required entry-level training of almost 800 hours, the CCSD-FD has taken purposeful steps to provide the most economically efficient emergency service possible. I know the connection is there for those of us that are in the weeds of it all, but I don't think that sentence says it as clearly as the one that I'm proposing, where it says there's been if you look at the not the red line version but the other version, it says with required entry-level training of almost 800 hours, there's been a steady decline in volunteerism. The CCSD-FD has taken purposeful steps to provide the most effective, which I think we would be well served to add into there, not just efficient, but effective, economically efficient emergency services possible within its budget limitations, because then that speaks to why we're trying to raise the additional money. And if the committee would not be insulted by that particular change of that last sentence to just kind of more clarity and add in the effectiveness, I think that's an important point to be making. And then with the changes to fund from higher, I would be okay with the rest of it.
Part of authorship here is the chief's, okay? So I'd like to invite him to come down, and if he's okay with the changes that you've made, I'm okay with the changes that you've made. I do think he researched the grand jury items, so he may speak to that
Okay, if you can speak to that, that'd be great.
I'm trying to find it right now and I can't. There's at least two separate grand jury reports with multiple responses in regards to recommendations they had. So it's possible it was referenced in an earlier version, but what was captured there was increased staffing would help in regards to the fire prevention services and delivery for the community. I can't find that specific recommendation, but I know it was in there. So I think it was probably in the previous version that I don't have accessible right now. There is a line item in reference. I could bring the computer up and show you. There is a line item reference in the meat of the letter that says we have already addressed these recommendations that you've put before us, and one of those things that is specifically stated there is the increased staffing secondary to the safer acquisition. So it references the recommendation most likely from the previous letter, but that's one I don't have on the computer, if that makes sense.
Okay, you're saying specifically safer, or not just increased staffing. And
we were using the safer to address the recommendation of the increased staffing.
Right,
so
but you were doing that, the actual recommendation, and I don't want to pick too tight.
I agree. We need to be right with it. So,
well, my objective is this, and this is my 7th year, and of the grand jury recommendations, I don't recall seeing that. And what I'm trying to do from a process perspective is strike that so that we don't get a challenge if we're not certain. That's the reason I wanted to strike it, because the 3 bullets are great. The 4th bullet, if there's somebody that says no, this was right there in the argument in favor and it's false, and I'm certain that there is going to be a rebuttal or an argument, and I just don't want to provide more fodder for that.
I agree with you 100%. We need to be absolutely, I think it's a very powerful statement having it included there, but short of having that document in front of me to show you this is where it is, I can't attest to where it would be.
I have a possible suggestion. We could add the word response to recommendations from the San Luis Obispo County grand jury, then we can leave it in there, because if it was in the response letter that we gave
it is in the response letter. Okay, then that would suffice.
I think that's more clear.
And,
So-
and in reference to your earlier question, I don't have any ownership of this document. I helped put it together, and that was about it. If you want to change it and make it read smoother and more understanding, I have no problem with that concept.
Madam President, just really quickly, I was involved in, if I recall, and again, I don't have the document in front of me, there was 5 recommendations originally from both grand jury reports. One was the fire hydrants. If you remember that, they wanted us to flush the fire hydrants and test the fire hydrants. 2 was to address the dead and dying trees, that we did something about that. 3 was additional staffing, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Number 4 was a fire department strategic plan, and number 5 was a purchase of a new fire truck. So if I recall, those were the 5 recommendations that were generated from the original grand jury report. But again, I do not have the document in front of me to substantiate that. So,
and without that, making the minor modification you had, I think that would speak to the concern you've expressed.
Right.
Which
If
is
we said a response, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah. Okay.
And again, I would like to state there's absolutely nothing personal, and except for the sentence at the end of the first paragraph, and those minor changes that we had talked about wording wise, whether we go with the one the committee had worked up or the one that, or some combination. It's no skin off my nose either way, because I think that without good bones, I couldn't have done anything that was worth anything. So,
I say if the changes allow it to read easier and smoother, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with adopting the document with President Rice's changes, including the change
response
for
to.
response to.
And I've put that note on here. So
well, then I would. Look at this a little bit more. To fund 3 additionals out, good. Positions, and I would take out and maintain the 4 personnel staffing model.
just take that sentence out.
No, after positions,
Yeah.
where it says to and maintain the 4-person staffing model, I
Yeah.
think that should be, if we strike that,
Strike the phrase and maintain.
maintain 4-person staffing model,
Okay.
and I think and fund and on the back on the last paragraph will
Yes.
be used exclusively to fund 3, take out additional
Career firefighters.
additional.
Okay. Taking out additional. Got it.
Yeah,
I missed
think
that additional. Thank
with,
you.
yeah, with those, and the change from response to recommendations.
Right.
Okay, and that's it.
Response to, and I've got that note on this one, which I will give to the district clerk.
That's I think that would be fine.
Is everybody clear on the changes? Mr. Carmel?
If you could you just start from the top and just go down and read through the changes themselves so that we can all be on the same page and there's no confusion?
Yes.
Just real quick.
Yes.
Just to Jim's point of taking out and maintain the 4 personnel staffing model, to us that seemed like it was just going to really clarify what the measure was going to be for.
Yes, but the background before we wrote just the code itself, there's a little box and it has the code in there. And before that, it's clear that this board is supporting a 4-person staffing model in that resolution. But in the code itself, it doesn't. It essentially perpetuates forever the use of this for a 4-person staffing model, which a future board may not want to do. It's clear that we're funding 3 additional firefighters, but it locks it in forever.
No, it doesn't.
And otherwise, the tax won't be able to be collected. This way, if we hire these 3 firefighters, it's going to take a board to change it. But at least the funds, when they come in, are hiring those guys day one. That's why I want to remove it.
No, thanks for clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so here I'm working from the one that's labeled on the footer, says President Rice suggested changes. That's the one I'm starting from.
Right.
Does everyone have that one? Okay.
Get on board.
Yeah. So there's no changes until your yes vote on measure vote in that second paragraph, or third paragraph, I guess, and strike and maintain the 4 personnel staffing model.
Where are we now?
The third paragraph, your yes, right
Okay.
there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, it should say
Okay.
the second paragraph.
on the second page.
Right.
To fund, got it.
Right here
Okay.
is where we started.
So we strike that phrase.
Right.
Okay, and then the second bullet point should start with response to recommendation. And then in the last paragraph, strike the word additional.
Were you going to add the word career or just strike the word additional?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes?
Oh.
Yeah, to be used exclusively to fund 3
Career
Yes.
firefighter
Okay.
positions. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yes, and we didn't even go over 300. I had some room in case we needed extra room.
We do have a request to speak.
Yes, we have more than
Before we
one.
move on that, okay.
So now that you've heard what we're considering, and we may or may not change it based on that. Those are the changes to that one. So I have Gary Turner, followed by Don Howell. Thank you, Vice President Berenger. Welcome.
Here's all the changes.
My name is Gary Turner. I owned a lot, 50 by 70, and I started to build my house in 1998. In the late 80s, I helped form a group called the United Residential Lot Owners of Cambria, also known as ERLO, to protect the lot owners' property rights. We stopped the CCSD from putting the standby water and sewer fees into the general fund years ago. They were breaking the law. It was a nexus violation. We also filed a suit against the CCSD when the retrofit program was proven that it would save water. And once they allowed the will serve letters to go through, we dropped that lawsuit. I currently believe that the lot owners are actually being taken advantage of by the CCSD and the county. They pay the parcel tax. They pay a state water project tax of $14, $62 for the Cuesta College bond, 2 bonds for the Coast Unified bond. One's $23, one is $112. They pay Cambria water availability every year for $47, the wastewater at $32, Cambria health special tax for $103, and Cambria fire assessment for $94. It sounds as though all the taxes that the lot owners are paying for are benefiting just the county or just the residents of Cambria. The CCSD is not going to issue intent letters or intent to serve letters for another 2 years, maybe more. So I can't believe what is being proposed by the new fire tax. I was in the fire service for 36 years with a large fire department. I was a battalion chief for 23 years. There is no benefit to the lot owners to add a 4th person. They do not live here and they would not benefit. A 3-person engine company is pretty much the standard in California. My department ran a 3-person engine company and a 4-man truck. The main benefit with a 4-person engine is to comply with the 2-in and 2-out rule. There is no nexus to charge the lot owners with another tax for fire prevention to fund a 4-person company. Weed abatement is done every year. A fire will not damage a vacant lot. An insurance company would laugh at you if you put a claim in for the damage. On the other hand, having a 4-person engine company would be beneficial to the homeowners, businesses, and the other local fire agencies which Cambria provides mutual aid with. As a homeowner, tax me I'm the one that's going to benefit. Can I continue? I'm more than happy to pay that tax because I'm the one benefiting, not the vacant lot owners. They're not benefiting in any way, and I don't think there's a nexus there that you can prove that it's worthwhile for them until they actually move here. It is important to learn from history so we don't repeat our mistakes of the past. James Otis was one of our nation's founding fathers. Around 1763, James made these quotes. "Taxation without representation is tyranny. If we are not represented, we are slaves. No parts of His Majesty's dominion can be taxed without their consent. Can there ever be liberty where property is taken without consent? Since November 2001, there has not been any intent to serve letters issued. It seems as though the CCSD is acting like the old British monarchy." Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for your comments. Don Howell?
Thank you. This is very brief. I'm thoroughly in favor of the measure. That's not why I'm standing here. The version that I read online, I did notice something, and I thought I should point it out to you. It was also apparent in the last board meeting when this was being discussed. I think there are many people who don't understand that you need 3 additional firefighters because you have 3 shifts, and you not need to have those engines manned 24 hours. You would be surprised how many people didn't understand that. So when you're talking about additional firefighters, I think if you have room if you have 300 words, I think maybe it might be wise to put that in there. The other thing which you probably don't have room for is if you recall the last Cambrian, not this week's, but last week, the letter that I think there is some lack of understanding as to the relation between CAL FIRE and that may be too much for that, but I think you should be aware of that as well. But definitely, I've talked to a number of people who did not realize. They said, "Where are these 3? Why do they need 3?" It's because you have 3 shifts. Anyway, that's all I wanted to suggest. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Vice President Berenger.
I would, if we have the words, and depending on the ad hoc committee, to put in 3 words that say 3 firefighters
To ensure
a 24-hour availability or something like that. I don't know.
I think
what are your
taking
thoughts?
the word out additional helps some.
Yeah, it
that
does.
it funds
It does.
3 firefighters.
To cover
And the
3
other
shifts.
suggestion I was going to make.
To cover 3 shifts. I think if you added that,
To cover
those
3
3
shifts?
words, it's up to you guys. But I think that would
to
clarify
fund
things.
3 firefighter positions on 3 shifts? For 3 shifts?
For each of 3 shifts? No, that would make it worse.
To fund 3 firefighter.
1 additional per shift.
1 additional per shift?
Oh, that's even.
Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know, I withdraw my suggestion unless the committee thinks that it's important. I think we can get that point across during the next 9
I think
4 months.
I think we can, and I think that it would be a good idea if we had a citizens forum on this
Sure.
kind of thing, because this is the kind of thing that, especially because I know that the people I talk to who are not dumb and they do know kind of what's going on have some confusion about this too.
Yeah.
So
Also-
would we be allowed to hold an informational forum if we were very specific to not advocating if for or against?
Yes, you just have to be very careful not to cross the line. It has to be straightforward, unbiased, objective in all ways, and then you are permitted to.
Okay, I think it's also, since we've got something down and we're ready, we probably are going to have a rebuttal to the rebuttal. And in there, if we think there are things we need to clarify, once we see the rebuttal, then let's put it there.
Yeah.
Okay? Is that acceptable?
So we'll take these different things we need to be giving direction and making decisions on one at a time. First, we need to approve the argument.
All right, you got another public comment coming, I think.
Do I have another public comment?
Great. We have Mr. Provost,
Mr. Provo.
and then I'll make a motion.
Steve Provo, Cambria.
You should get your slip in earlier.
Well,
sir.
I was debating whether to say this or not because it's basically editing comments. You start the second section of this. It says, your yes vote on measure asterisk will be used exclusively to fund 3 career firefighting positions. And then you have the same exact wording at the bottom. And I didn't know if you wanted to repeat that. You do. Okay. The other thing is you refer to this staffing model. Is a 3 firefighter positions a staffing model, or are you referring to the 2 in, 2 out?
I think we struck that phrase.
Oh, okay.
And maintain the 4-person staffing model?
No, this is at the end, the last
I
sentence. Because you struck that sentence earlier.
I think maybe we should strike that too, so we have the flexibility. I think we're getting more votes, more yes votes.
Yeah.
This is not advice. I'm just
No.
editing stuff.
You're an editor.
Thank you.
And an author. So there you go.
I think that at that point in the argument, I think that people are either zoned out at that point, or that they kind of understand that it helps the model of the staffing. I think staffing model is fairly.
Okay. With that,
I mean, it may not be the technical jargon.
With that, I move that we accept the words as modified for our argument.
Okay, just to clarify, we originally had 3 changes. Are we striking the word model? Are we keeping it in? We're not.
No.
We're keeping it.
Not making any additional.
We got it.
Anything else, we'll get in the rebuttal. So I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
So moved by Vice President Behringer, seconded by Director Pearson. Could you read the motion back so that we...
Could I make a comment?
Yes, you sure can.
Thank you. Maybe I just need some clarification more than anything. We represent we essentially are here to make decisions that represent the community of Cambria. And I heard Vice President Behringer comment a little while ago, and I didn't hear everything that was attached to it before, but he made the remark that we didn't want to give people who were going to be doing we didn't want to give fodder to the people doing the rebuttal to this statement in favor. And I'm thinking, well, I think we're supposed to be a neutral party and just be providing the opportunity for the community to make a decision on this item. So to me, the rebuttal is just as important as the statement in favor of. And, we've also brought up the idea, or at least I've brought it up, of having a town hall meeting where we have representatives from all fire agencies that we might be dependent upon at some point, from our own very fine fire department to CAL FIRE to the County of San Luis Obispo and whoever else. And so I don't know why I'm just feeling a little bit awkward in voting to approve a statement where there isn't a statement that is, like I say, that is a rebuttal to this one, because I'm in favor of both of those for the community. Am I way off base here?
I agree with you in your angst. We are putting a statement out that is not so. We're supporting this project. The committee got together and with the fire, so we're putting words out, and we have very little time to put that out. And of course, we're going to we as a group have voted, and we must be in support of this because we have been. That's what the board has decided, whether one person likes it or not. It's not influencing my vote. When I go into the voting booth and vote, I'm going to vote based upon all the information. This statement, the rebuttal statement, our rebuttal to the rebuttal, and their rebuttal to our rebuttal. So I'm going to look at it all and make a decision based upon, and everybody should. Now, if you want to have a town hall, having a town hall is great. That's where you educate the public based upon the statements that are in there. We only have a few days to get this in, and as does the rebuttal argument, people have only a few days to get that there in. We're going to see that by March. We'll see that next month. So, yeah.
And
I agree. I look at all, when I vote, I'm looking at all sides. What we're saying is we're bringing this to the public to make a decision.
And we make the argument in favor of as part of the process. And then past that point, we don't use district resources to advocate either for or against, if I correctly understand the process.
That's correct. You can advocate at an open notice public meeting. You can take a position at an open notice
so if
public
it's
meeting.
an open, so like a
Functionally,
town
that's
hall.
what you're doing. Right.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah.
But we can't advocate.
No. And you can't use public resources to advocate
Got it.
or to campaign. And public resources is very broad. Staff, equipment, anything.
So somebody would have to rent this hall. If someone wanted to have a town meeting, they would have to rent this hall.
If you were giving an objective, fact-based presentation, and again, there's a fine line there, then you can sponsor that.
We as a district?
As a district.
Okay, that's interesting.
As long as we're not advocating or
I'd rather charge for it.
objecting.
So can I ask kind of a dumb guy question here? We, as a committee on this board, have written the argument in favor.
Yes.
Yet it's up to somebody in the community to write the rebuttal.
Right,
So
the
I would
argument against.
Well, why aren't we doing both?
That's not a dumb guy question.
We can. Somebody can. If you want to write the rebuttal, I think you could do that.
Write the argument against?
Any individual can write the argument opposing. You could. Honestly, anyone can. I think underlying this is we put this measure on the ballot. Impliedly, we at least want the people to have the opportunity to vote on it. I think that's really what took place here. But that doesn't mean that I've seen it where two members of a board have written the opposing argument and three have written the supporting argument. It can come down that way. So your question's not a bad question.
It just, I don't want to take any more time. I just have this feeling, if I were out there as a member of the public observing this, it would seem to me that it's somewhat one-sided with regard to the approach that the board is taking, in that we're voting for the statement in favor of it, yet it doesn't seem like we're addressing the other side. I think I'm being redundant. I'm sorry to be taking up the time, but it just seems to me to be, it's the appearance, I guess, that I'm concerned about, and the reaction that members of the public would have in this very, how could we say it, very two-sided kind of issue.
Director Wharton?
Well, in response to Director Farmer's, but with the recommendation of the county of San Luis Grand Jury and the change Vice President Beringer made, was that I took it as if the measure was passed, then there wouldn't be grounds for a legal challenge later on down the line to shoot it down. Is that correct?
That's why.
Yeah. I didn't think that we were not trying to give a rebuttal statement any fodder, but if there was a legal challenge down the road, if this was the will of the voters. So that's how I took your statement, and I hope that clarifies a little bit.
And I would like to make sure I do see the point that you're making, because it doesn't seem like we're putting this on the ballot for the public to decide, but then we're only taking a position of arguing in favor of it, as opposed to writing both arguments. It also seems, though, contradictory to do both arguments in a way. But I see where you're coming from, where that conflict is coming from, because whether or not the board has a position for or against the measure our intention was to put the measure onto the ballot and not necessarily say for or against, because we want the community to decide. And you're saying that having only the argument for seems to signal to the community that the board supports passing the tax. Is that where you're coming from? Am I stating that?
I would imagine that's a fairly accurate statement there, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that I understand.
Before we call the question, I don't know if that's new or not.
Ken Topping, did you have something you'd like to contribute? Thank you, sir. Welcome.
It occurs to me that a little context might be helpful. And this is not an unprecedented measure in the sense that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that a Prop 218 measure was passed by the community back around 2000, 2001, somewhere back in that day. You can research it and see if that's the case. So this is not a wholly new idea. Basically, your statement is a very mild statement of purpose and effect, and it's not a strong advocacy because many people in the community feel very strongly about the concern of high fire hazard, and that's been elevated the last few years. So it's become a much greater concern than it has been in the past when the voters of the community did okay an increase in special fees for firefighting, and I can help you research that if you wish, but it's something that needs to be said, I think, at this point, so that people don't feel that it's brand new and heading off in a new direction.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, would you please read back the motion, and then we will have call the roll.
Motion to approve the argument in favor as submitted by President Rice and with revisions as read.
All right, that was moved by Vice President Berenger and seconded by Director Pearson. Let's call the roll, please.
Vice President Berenger?
Aye.
Director Pearson?
Aye.
Director Wharton?
Aye.
Director Farmer?
No.
President Rice?
Aye. The motion passes 4-1. And we have a couple more items of business on this issue. Who signs the argument is a matter of our decision, and how we work if there is a statement of opposition from anybody, who would do the rebuttal, and whether or not the board wants to see the rebuttal before it goes to the county election. So let's start with who signs the argument. It would seem to me anyone voted aye on the argument would make sense to have them sign.
I will defer my signature to the fire chief.
Okay. So, and I don't have a problem signing. I did some editing on it, and I would hope that Directors Pearson and Wharton would.
Yeah, I'll sign.
Director Farmer, would you like to sign even though you voted against the motion? I don't want to leave you out in case you would like to sign the argument in favor.
I think I'd rather not, thank you.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't assuming something. So,
And I assume the chief, but I'd like the chief to accept my invitation.
will you sign, sir? Yes, I'm hearing a yes from the back of the room. And so that's 4 signatures then we have on right now.
Then a question for Chief Hollingsworth. I showed up to the meeting. The document was pretty much well written and edited. I know ex-Chief Putney was there as well. I don't know if we want to give him the opportunity to sign his name. He was very vocal and very. He added a lot of participation to the meeting, so I don't know about that as well.
Mr. Carmel, you got something?
I just did want to indicate to the Vice President that there's the opportunity for 5 to sign, so if you did want to sign, you could include.
Okay. So if we have only 4, does that look awkward, or we can add Putney? We can have whoever wants
Sure.
to.
You can add a 5th, Putney or whoever you'd like. You want to make sure that they're willing.
Because Mr. Putney isn't here, and I'm sure that he's going to be very visible in this entire process.
Right.
I think that a signature from the general manager would be a strong advocation. And since he's here and we can make the decision now, I'd make that invitation.
That's an excellent reason. So the signers will be General Manager Gruber, Chief Hollingsworth, Director Wharton, Director Pearson, and me. And then on the rebuttal options, I don't have a strong. I think what will happen is we will get again a good document again, and I will just nitpick on it. So I don't need to be involved in the rebuttal process or feel the need to approve it, because I know it will go through council to make sure that it's all good. The one thing I would say is that when we had the comment from the vacant lot owner, that we should really consider the fact that there is a benefit to the vacant lot owners, in that if there's no community here because a structure fire starts and we can't get it put down and the community burns down, there ain't no value to vacant property in a town that doesn't have any other houses in it. So there is some benefit. Now, granted, it's not as much benefit as somebody who owns a house and lives here, but this is the policy decision that was made by the board, and it is a legally allowed way to go, and that's the direction we've had. So does anyone have any strong feelings one way or the other on the rebuttal argument?
Yeah, I have a suggestion that
Yes.
we direct a rebuttal back to Mr. Wharton and Mr. Pearson, so they could take a look at it. I'm sure they'll work closely in conjunction with the other with the chief, and I think that would be a good way to handle that. And as you know, in the last time we had this discussion, I don't think it's an opinion that you have that it benefits lot owners, but I'd never had that opinion. I think it's improved properties only, but I'm going with the decision of the board, and that's what we decided, and that's what we're going to do.
Is that an acceptable direction to the Emergency Services Committee to write the rebuttal?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay. Do we need a motion on that?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
So moved. So moved, that is the...
So would the motion be moved to authorize the Emergency Services Ad Hoc Committee to write the rebuttal argument with the assistance of Chief Hollingsworth, and have the same individuals who signed the primary argument sign the rebuttal argument?
Ooh, I like it. So moved.
Okay.
With just one, can you read back, because there's something right at the beginning that I think delegate. Do we need to delegate so it doesn't have to come back to the board?
I think a delegate or authorize will both.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were getting the language that we need to be. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine with me. So that's the motion.
Second.
Moved by Vice President Behringer, seconded by Director Pearson.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, I would like it if you would make a comment, please.
I just feel a little uncomfortable that the same people that wrote the argument in favor, who I believe favor, and you don't quote me on this necessarily, but I believe that they are in favor of a 4th firefighter. Having someone who is in favor of something write the rebuttal, I'm not so sure there could be real objectivity in that area. And this is no reflection on the gentleman that I'm talking about.
No,
I mean, I have a lot of respect for David and Aaron in this regard of putting this together. I just would rather have someone that has a passion as to why they don't feel that this measure should be approved. I'd be more comfortable with someone in that frame of mind writing it, or at least someone who was willing to take, like I say, a very objective approach to both sides of the issue, and then therefore writing the rebuttal.
I think I can clear this up pretty simply. Their rebuttal is the rebuttal to the argument opposing the measure. They're not going to write the argument opposing the measure. They're going to write the argument that's the rebuttal.
Response to the rebuttal.
The response to
Yeah.
the opposition.
So Citizen X will be
So
writing.
they'll still be on the in favor of side.
Okay, so it's my misunderstanding. Once again, I'm taking up time here. So
no.
you're going to be
It's good to be
writing
clear.
the rebuttal to the rebuttal.
Correct.
Is that what
To
you're
the
talking?
letter, yeah. It's not really the other the opposite. There's an for every measure.
Okay.
There's an argument in favor and an argument opposing.
All right.
And for every opposing argument, there's a rebuttal to it, usually written by the people in favor.
That's okay.
And for everything in favor of, there's a rebuttal from the people in opposition.
All right. The anesthesia is kicking back in, so I'm getting more confused. So,
Come on, let me talk some more. I'll put you straight to sleep. So is everybody clear on the motion? All right. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Vice President Berenger.
Aye.
Director Pearson.
Aye.
Director Wharton.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye. 5-0, that motion passes, and we don't need to have it come back to the board. Does that take care of all of the items that we need to cover on this one?
Yes, Madam President.
Okay. Everybody stand up and dance around for a minute. Let's get back to the, okay, so item A is going to be pushed to next month. Maybe perhaps to a town hall even? Something crazy like involving the community in board goal and in the pros goals. So we're pushing item 6A. So we are on 6B.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 6B is your item. Is discussion and consideration of the 2018 board goals and objectives. And with that, I'll turn it over to you and let you present your staff report.
Okay, so board goals doesn't mean president's goals, and so I'm hoping for a bit of a discussion on this. Hopefully I've done such a fantastic job of reading everybody's minds as to where they would like to see the direction of this board go, that this is good as is. But I do want to point to some of the things that are already beginning to happen, which is one of the goals I was suggesting, that we stop doing reaction to everything and start being proactive. And I think that we've seen today some specific examples of that. The grant, for the FEMA grant process being one. And I want to keep that going. And I also want to make sure that we address the issues of community confidence that have, let's just say we don't have the highest level of confidence in this board, and we need to work as a team to fix that. It's not that there's no confidence, it's just it could be better. So in looking at the role of the board as policy and setting the directions for the staff, I think that it's important that we initiate a longer range strategic planning process, whether it's technically called strategic planning or not. We need to be looking more long range rather than just to next month. And in order to do that, we have to do some meetings that are designed around having a mission statement and a vision statement. And all of us have our own ideas of vision for Cambria, but one of the things I think that has divided this board is that we haven't ever really had a full discussion of what each of our visions is and where the commonalities are, so that we can go forward in a way that is more cohesive, even when we don't all agree on the direction, that we all kind of understand this is the path we're kind of trotting down at this moment, and just focusing on specific staff operational items like getting a permit doesn't do it for the board's work. I'm hoping that directors have the time and inclination to attend the SDLF training in Monterey in April. I think there's a lot to be said for, this is a team. None of us is more important than the others, and it's important that we learn to work as a team. And I think all of us coming from the same direction and having the same training would be helpful. I can't demand it. It can't require it. This is a volunteer position. I think that it is worth the money that would be expended to do it, because it also reduces we get our insurance, our liability insurance through SDRMA that sponsors the Leadership Academy. So we do get points that help reduce our liability insurance. It also reduces the risk to the district if we all understand our roles and positions and what we need to be doing and what we should not be doing. And all of us could use that. I know that Director Behringer has been to the academy. I've gone. I know that last year Director Farmer and I went, and I think it's worthy of having. The second goal is to create standing committees, and we can have a fuller discussion on that agenda item when it gets here. But this is something that I think all of us have said over the years. We need to have some standing committees. And I have some suggestions for how we develop those, but those are only suggestions because, again, I might sit here in the middle, but I'm not the only brain on this dais, and so I want this to be a starting point. If we have the time, as we're doing the longer range planning, it would be good to look at, like, say, the Water Master Plan, as General Manager Gruber, our conservation plan, and what the recommendations are in these plans that we already have. Like, are they correct? Are they up to date? We're going to have to get ready to do the urban water management plan again. We're about to come up on the deadline for that, which comes every 5 years. So there's some places where there's missing policies, like, for example, there's times when it doesn't seem like all the communications that come from agencies get to us, and it's mostly because our general manager probably is really busy. But if we set a policy in place, then we can have clear lines of making sure that we know what's going on from our staff rather than finding out from the community, which I think would be a positive. So that's the kind of thing when I talk about policies that maybe are missing that we maybe need to look at. I also don't know about the 30-day email policy, that after 30 days we don't keep them. So there's some things, and those may come out as part of the work of the committees or the longer range planning. And this is a giant shark bite right now of what these goals are. There's not a lot of measurable actions at this moment, partially because I just wanted to give a starting off point. And I'm going to shut up now because I would like to hear what you all have to say. Oh, come on.
No, I think if I'm recognized, I think that it's excellent so far. I think you've hit everything right on. I read it. It seems like obviously the thing to do. I think the most important thing that I would like to do is go up to the last paragraph before the suggested goals. At the end of that sentence says, the needed actions and measurable outcomes can be determined. And that's if we have a moment to talk about that, I think that's the focus. Whereas as far as your goals, I think that they're right on. And now how do we, who does those measurable actions, and how do we move forward? And I'm willing to discuss that.
Director Wharton.
So to continue with Behringer's statements, so if we are looking at, say, some wastewater treatment plant, obviously we'd have to involve Alchin and his staff, and they can get together and, okay, we want to have, we need these things done, and then we get them and they say, okay, so by this date we got to have this action completed, this done by September, and that will allow us to do things in October and November. I think if there was some sort of list on the infrastructure that we can get with those folks, and then they can set, well, we're looking at the big picture, they're looking at the small picture, and they know the steps to get to the end. I think we would need to include them in on it, correct?
And not in my opinion.
Yeah.
No, I think staff does what staff needs to do, and the infrastructure ad hoc committee would be saying, this is the funding we need, and this is when the board is going to take action on getting that funding. Or after staff does all of their stuff and they have a priority and they come back to you and say, we don't have the money, the board would say, yes, it should be, instead of water, it's going to be wastewater. We have to make the tough decisions or directions and let staff just do what staff does. And I think we shouldn't get into the weeds. We should look at the big picture. Let's see if I can take one. I'll take infrastructure because I think we've done this. Infrastructure, financing, and emergency services. So emergency services would do just what you've done. You're doing, is it going on a ballot measure, doesn't it? What are we going to say about the ballot measure? But do we get another fire truck? That comes from staff. They build up all the information, and now you are either an advocate or not. And probably more important is rather than having the chief writing the fact that he needs another fire truck, to have an opportunity to, being part of that committee, to welcome the public, to inform the public, to get feedback from the public, so that it's not staff driving everything, it's the board saying these are the important priorities. So that's the way I look at it, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I
You
look
said
at
the
it.
key sentence, these are the important priorities. That's what, and I think that's the conversation this board needs to have, is what are those priorities? How do we balance these things? I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was just, cleared it up.
Director Farmer?
I was going to make a brief comment since we were just talking about infrastructure. It's Vice President Berringer and I are on the Ad hoc Infrastructure Committee. I don't know if he was as equally frustrated as myself, alluding to what Director Wharton said about, well, we get together with John Alchin and his crew, and we take a look at, well, what are the most important, let's say, repairs that need to be needed, or things need to be upgraded at the wastewater treatment plant, and then we'll go down the line and work on those. Well, 4 times I think we got together and saw the capital improvements project listing that Engineer Gresham's put together, and there was only one problem that prevented all that from happening, is that we didn't have the money. And that continues to be the issue. And how we generate that income, I can only hope that perhaps some grant funding that Mr. Flores is investigating can come our way, because that's probably the only way to really address those issues.
Right.
This is getting off the topic, but I'm just putting that out
I
there.
don't think it is off the topic, because what we're trying to do is say, what are the next steps? What should we as a board be doing? And we as a board should be finding grants. Exactly. We as a board should be finding maybe there's some rates that we can change. We as a board should be saying that maybe we get a grant writer, maybe we do certain things to make sure that we can make that funding happen. And maybe we'll be arguing among ourselves. Mm-hmm. In other words, if the finance committee wants to do something, mm-hmm. and the public wants to do something, let's say with the park, and we're more infrastructure, we might want to bring the public involved and see how we direct staff, how we essentially push back and say, I know you don't have the money, now how do we get the money? And it might be grants, it might be staff, suggesting that we have more or fewer staff. It might be, we don't know what it might be, but I'm hoping that having these areas, emergency services, finance, and infrastructure, to be getting more feedback from the public, more professional opinions from the public, and then directing or putting a policy in place that staff has to continue on with. So we did it. We just finished it, almost finished. We'll finish in June. But there was a desire to have an extra firefighter. Staff did all their work. We know we had to get the money. There's nowhere to get the money, or the best opinion that this board made is that we try and get the money from in this case, it's lot owners, but or from the voters. So the voters make the decision, and hopefully we get the money there.
And I think that it would be helpful for this board to raise to the policy level rather than the more operational level, and help set priorities so that General Manager Gruber isn't pulled in 15 different directions, not knowing which is the more important thing. Is it more important to, for example, buy the library or build tanks? Is it more important to raise rates or try to keep rates low? And this has been the unofficial, unapproved policy, let the infrastructure maintenance go, because we haven't had the funding. So we can set those kinds of priorities, and I think it will help kind of organize, and having the public involvement will help with the public confidence. If there is anything that isn't in here, I think out of the committees is going to come a lot of the priorities that we need to set. And I think out of the strategic planning, whether it's technically strategic planning or more like long-range community discussions that are more town hall-ish and not as diocese, so to speak. Not Catholic diocese, but I know it's getting late. So that I'd like to hear from Director Pearson.
I'm really good with goal number 2 and goal number 3. I think both of those are excellent, and I think a lot of what the bullet points underneath for measurement are good. Okay. My only issue might be with number 1. The makeup of the board as it is today can, I think, make strategic priorities and that kind of thing. But us doing a mission and vision statement is presumptuous, I think. I think the community needs to make the mission and vision statement of where they want the town of Cambria to go in the future. Because if we make up a mission and vision statement, it may be that 3 of us are voted out in November, and the new board wouldn't agree with the vision and mission statement that we come up with. So I think if we're going to try to do that, it's got to be a bubble up more as much as it is a decision by us.
Vice President Barron.
I kind of agree and also not. I tend to think that in April, if we all are going to the SDLF or whatever, there is kind of like this a little professional training, and we would have an opportunity to talk about goals and objectives. We could outline them. We could then present, get some public feedback. But I think there is, we have a vision statement on the cookie crock there or something. Great things for great people. So maybe we should make sure that it comes from the board and is reflective of what we think the community would be like. So when we put something on the website, somebody could say, "Oh, what are you really a water and wastewater department, or are you a parks and rec?" So anyway, maybe we can address that, and maybe in May or June, set that as a target to whether we even float something out there or not.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's important to have active public engagement in the mission and vision. I think there's value not only for the long-term resiliency of a mission statement and a vision, but for the purposes of having a district that is coherent. It's important to include. I didn't mean to imply that it would just be the board's job to do, but as representing the entire community, it's our job to make decisions for the community, hopefully with community input. And I wouldn't presume to tell this community what the mission statement was from just this board any more than I would presume to say this is the mission statement I hereby say this is our mission statement, and you guys better ratify it or else. I mean, I wouldn't do that either. I think that it's important to have that public engagement. I don't think this district has a mission, and I think that's a problem.
Would it help, Madam President, the board, and I'm a strong proponent of this, and maybe the board's not, and I had sent a proposal out, but to help the board facilitate in being successful, because I think that's something you all agree on. I think we all want to be successful. We all want buy-in from the community. I think that's an important part of all this. I think department managers' input is important, and that's why I would just solicit at least the thought of the facilitator that I suggested in the proposal that I circulated to the board. Not because you're not necessarily capable of putting this together or something like that. It's just in so many instances it's really helpful to ask for help sometimes. And I know that the $19,000 probably socked you between the eyes, but if you can focus on the end product and the results that it may yield, including the very things in which you think are important, which is community involvement and staff involvement and things like that. But I think all your hearts are in the right place. I just don't necessarily know that we may be able to all get there, or at least have the quality of product that we want without the assistance of somebody. I know sometimes that I don't like to ask for help. And that can be a weakness or it can be a strength, but if you can get past the dollar amount and really be receptive to that, I think that you'll all find that what you want to achieve may be a little bit easier. But that's just my thought. So, and I would say that these goal 1, 2, 3 is not in order by my preference. It's just it could be 7, 10, 27, and B. And I don't have, if we start out doing the standing committees and looking at what policy documents might need kind of through the committees, and we're working toward the professional development, it may just bubble up from the board itself how we go forward on those things, and then we're not making that at the top of the list. Is that Vice President Berger?
Yeah, I'm sympathetic with Mr. Gruber's desire to have a facilitated event. I've been involved in them. They're very good. You get everybody together, especially in a business environment or in a staffing environment. Right now, I think we have other priorities for the money. I tend to think that if we bring this up in June, by that time we will have more experience on the board. We'll have a better feel for really the survivability of 60% of the board, and we might have our financial house a little bit better in order, and
or at least
we have tough decisions to make. We don't all have to start from the same opinion. I believe we should start. It's healthy to have different opinions so that we can work out and come to a consensus. So that's just my input, and my suggestion is that Mr. Gruber bring it up in June.
Are we requiring a motion on this? We can just have staff direction and basic consensus on.
It's not set up for
moving
action.
Forward. Okay, so then the next step would be to do committees, which is the next item and last item on our agenda today. Besides future agenda items, and unless there's something that directors feel strongly, we'll kind of push toward the back, the mission and vision statement, but pull the other things forward. Is that acceptable? Okay, so everybody's clear on that. Because we went away, the reason why we have the committees on the agenda again is because we went away in January still a little confused as to who was doing what where.
I move that we approve item 6D.
I don't think it's not.
Yeah, can I introduce it, Madam President?
Yeah, item 6D.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. Did you have any public speakers on the previous item?
No, no, the ones we just did, no.
Okay, thank you, Board.
Look how happy they all are.
A discussion and consideration of establishing a committee and director liaison assignments Just a couple things on this. The fiscal impact is related to the establishment of standing committees for staff time necessary to comply with the Brown Act. In other words, a standing committee, just for the board's information, is an agendized a meeting, and it also requires to take minutes and that those minutes be published. So, for an example of that would be like Haley with the BRP committee. She was assigned to that. So, it's it's a resulting in there is no fiscal impact resulting from the establishment of ad hoc committees and liaison assignments. Just so with the caveat to that, of course, there's staff time, but I think it's important that we're a part of that. The following is review of the proposed standing and ad hoc committees and their tasks, as well as the liaison assignments which are to be considered by the board. It should be noted that standing committees are ongoing responsibility, and they have an ongoing responsibility, and their meetings are subject to the Brown Act. With regard to the liaison assignments, as reflected below, the minutes and the discussions at the last meeting indicate that 2 board members were identified for several of the liaison assignments. Only 1 liaison, however, is needed for each assignment. That's just we want to bring that to your attention, so whatever the board decides on that. Therefore, for clarification, staff has recommended the board member should be designated as the primary liaison and the other one be designated as the alternative in case you can't make it. This can be discussed and finalized at today's meeting. So the proposed committees for standing are the Finance Committee, and that would be President Rice and Director Pearson. For infrastructure, these are the 2 standing committees that are being proposed, would be Director Berenger and Director Farmer. For the ad hoc committees, which are not standing, you have Emergency Services Ad Hoc Committee, which would be Director Pearson and Director Wharton, and the tasks associated with these are identified below. Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, it's an ad hoc committee, Director Berenger with Director Wharton. The Rate Study Ad Hoc Committee, and I stand corrected. Earlier I said the Budget Committee, which is not the case. It would be this committee that would be working with Alex Handler on the rate study. That'd be President Rice and Director Berenger. And then the liaison assignments that the board agreed to, you can add to delete, are the North Coast Advisory Council, which would be Director Berenger. The Coast Union School District would be President Rice. Cambria Healthcare District would be Wharton as the primary and Director Pearson as the secondary, alternate. Cambria Forest Committee would be Director Farmer. Cambria Tourism Board would be Director Berenger. The only question I had about this one, Director Berenger, did you serve on the Tourism Board? I would seek some guidance with District Council on that one. I'm not sure if it's a conflict or not.
Well, the guidance I would give is I don't think that we need to have a representative, but that's just me.
We can certainly get the same information from a board member.
Yeah, that's kind of the point, is
Sure.
that it's just at
Drop me
least
off there.
identified
Right.
for the public.
You're still there, Director Berenger. Fire Safe Focus Group, Director Wharton and Director Pearson. And then Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, Director Farmer, who's been on that for a while. And the San Simeon CSD is Director Rice. And the regulatory and other local, state, and federal agencies, President Rice and Director Berenger. One thing that we did discuss on a previous agenda item is the possibility of the formation of a legislative committee. So that's something that could be considered possibly today or maybe at a further date. So any questions, just let me know, and we're more than happy. Just as a caveat here, staff's here to absolutely support the board. You want to have 2 standing committees, you want to have 3 standing committees. Our job is to make sure we support you and support the community. We're 100% on board, so whatever you guys decide, I just want you to know that we're here to support you.
Okay. There's one correction or clarification I need on the pros. There isn't a pros ad hoc committee. We just have because they're a commission who's advisory to the board as opposed to having board members be a part of the committee. Can you help clarify?
You can. It's a little unusual. I think normally pros would report directly to you. That's their job. But
right.
If you want to get current, ongoing.
Could we make it a liaison instead?
Yeah, I think if that's acceptable, and I was thinking because he has children under the age of 21 that maybe Director Wharton would like to be participating as liaison for pros. I don't want to volunteer you for
liaison,
it. Yeah, but right now we have Director Berenger and Director Wharton, and I think we only need 1 liaison.
Sure.
Is that acceptable, Vice President Berenger?
Sure.
Although there will be recusal from Jim on one project
Right.
you just
Well,
noted.
and he's not going to be
I'm not
the
gonna be on it.
liaison. Thank you for next time, put in a slip. Thank you. But I appreciate you pointing that out. And on the Cambria Fire Safe Focus, is it you guys are going to trade off who goes to that one in the healthcare district? By you guys, I mean Director Pearson and Director Wharton.
Yeah, I think General Manager Gruber pointed me out as the primary on that. I think due to the timing of when the CCHD meetings are, I may not be committed to do them fully, so I would prefer if Pearson maybe took the lead on that, and if I can attend them as needed or as possible.
Like as a backup?
Or just show up when I can, type of thing.
I think the reason you were there because you're the emergency services.
Yeah, exactly. But I think if I don't know.
Yeah, I can take that as
Yeah.
number one.
Okay, so that's Director.
And then maybe you want to take Fire Safe Focus Group as number one.
Okay, so then that would be, the correction would be taking Director Wharton off of Healthcare District and Director Pearson off of Cambria Fire Safe Focus. Of course, and in any situation, like if Vice President Berenger can't go to NCAC, he might call another director and ask if they could go in his place. I mean, this is just for to have clarity as to who's doing what, because that's always not.
But it is
my
okay
strong suit.
if Pearson and I were both at a CCHD meeting. There's no,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's only two, I think that's fine.
If it's another agency meeting, as long as you're not talking to each other about our district's business, all five of us could be there. We just can't talk to each other about it. Unless we're in
Madam
a
President, may I
public
make if you guys can't, if the board members can't make this, just give me a call and I'll try to do my best. But the other thing on this item, I would ask for some guidance from the board, specifically relating to what your expectations are, because if you look at the infrastructure committee, we haven't met in a while, and I don't want it to be, well, I'm going to call these meetings together when I'm available. So
I actually have some suggestions on that. So.
I'd like you to, if you guys want to, you tell me, and we'll make it a priority, because I want this to be a priority. It's a priority for you. I wanted to make it a priority for me, and I shouldn't be the one determining. I should to a certain extent, but I want to hear from you and what your expectations are, so we can make sure that we accommodate the board's schedule and making sure that these groups are meeting on a regular and ongoing basis.
I have a request to speak. It says 6B. Is Mr. McKinnon, you wanted to speak to 6B because we finished that item. We're on 6D as in dog. Did you want to speak to this item?
Okay.
Yep, come on up then, please. You want to talk on what we're talking about committees? It's all on you. Welcome, sir.
Well, and Jerry McKinnon, Cambria, California, and talk is cheap. It's the action that is important. I haven't heard, of course I haven't been here for the whole presentation, but I haven't heard any talk about deadlines for accomplishing these goals. When you have a goal, there's a line in the sand and you do everything to get to that line in the sand, or you change the line or whatever you're doing. But I haven't heard you talk about deadlines. You say 2018, is that the calendar year of 2018, or is it the fiscal year of 2018? And that mean at the end of 2018, the goals go away and then you set some more? Or is this an ongoing project that you're going to decide that this is what you're going to do, and it's going to last until a problem comes up that requires you to change it? That's one question I have. The other question is evaluations. Who's going to evaluate your progress? Is that mirror, mirror on the wall? I think I'm doing pretty well. Or will there be someone else doing the evaluation of your progress in accomplishing these goals? Now, you have people that come to the meetings, and for some reason we have an interest. And I think if we hear that you're setting up a goal, we may be looking over your shoulder and following your track. But I would like to hear specifics as to year that you're talking about and the specific of whether these are open-end goals that will go on forever and ever and you'll change them as what's necessary or what? That's my concern, just as having worked with committees in the past and seeing what happens when you talk, but there's no action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. So let me speak to what I was envisioning and answering both Mr. McKinnon's and Mr. Gruber's questions. I think that what we need to be doing, and I personally think the emergency services should not be ad hoc. I really think that there's a benefit that the infrastructure committee has spent the last 14 months learning things about the system and things that are needed, and so that knowledge continues forward, and having standing committee for fire would do the same thing. You're learning all of the ins and outs of fire, and by having public members, even if the current board members serving on that committee are unelected, then we still have some institutional knowledge on that committee because those committee members could continue forward. In terms of evaluation, 3 of us are up for election in November, so that's one clear way to have evaluation in terms of the progress on goals. And I would hope that we are also checking in with each other on how we think we're doing. My suggestion is that each of the committees, and whether you want to keep emergency services ad hoc right now and just start with the 2, I really want to leave that to the full board to decide. But I think what we do is that between now and the March meeting, the standing committees go and talk about what are we in charge of. Like, does infrastructure mean that we look at software for SCADA? Does it mean that we look at advising on prioritizing the CIPs? If we're looking at finance, does that mean that we look at the finance software? I mean, there's some places where there's going to be a little bit of a Venn diagram on these, but having just the 2 board members to start out with, and when we come back to the March meeting, what we could do, and this is just my suggestion, is that what we do is we have committees to start out with for 1 year, a 1-year period, because there's a lot of complicated things involved when you have public participating in committees, like how do you pick them? I think we've shown we do a really bad job at that job right now. So I think that starting out, what we should do is have 5 people on a committee, and for example, for the infrastructure committee, Director Wharton and I and Director Pearson would each appoint 1 person. So we felt like each of us have a voice, and then there's 2 board members that are on that committee. So then we don't have the rigmarole, and this is for the first year, so that we can kind of get started. And during that first year, we can come up with the procedures for how do we appoint people to it? Is it something you do as an open application? How long do they serve, and the terms, and all of those details that can be so fun, like the last quarter of last year. Because I think that if we can build a much more solid foundation if what we do is all of us are kind of feeling like we're being heard no matter what committee we actually serve on as a board member. Because I really do want this to be these standing committees to be going forward kind of an indefinite, this is what we do at this district. If people don't like that idea or have a different idea, I also think that in March, we would each come back with suggestions for who to appoint to the committees we're not on. And hopefully talk to those people so they know that they're being chosen. And then in March, then we can add in, once we already have the scope of what each committee is going to be doing that's determined by the board members, then we have the public members join. And whether we are on a regular schedule, like we meet once a quarter. Right now, it seems like once a month would be good, just so we can build up the sturdiness of the committees. I think you get my point, and I think that I would like to have Mr. Gruber participate in the scoping discussions for each of the committees. I think that's kind of an important role for just to make sure that we're not leaving something out in Director Farmer, and then Director Pearson.
It almost sounds as if from what you just said that we actually have to form a standing committee to determine the structure of a standing committee, which sounds kind of funny on the face of it.
I think it would be an ad hoc standing committee.
An ad hoc standing committee, okay. So that probably needs to, there you go. But I want to say, make a comment on Jerry McKinnon with regard to, let's say, vision and goal. To me, the main goal of this board should be cultivating more trust and honesty between the board and the district and the community. And to me, that's been lacking in the past, and therefore fewer people wanting to attend and participate because they don't feel their voice is being heard and that their opinions aren't being acknowledged. And I think the more that, well, obviously the tenor of the board has changed, and I feel that as a result of that, hopefully people are feeling more hopeful about how the information that they wish to gain from the board or what it is that they wish to contribute through public comment or whatever is actually being listened to, is actually being heard. And I think to me that's a really important issue. And I just wanted to put that out there. And I feel like just what we're doing right now is, for the first time in a long time, developing standing committees to have more public participation. It's like step one toward greater community involvement and all of us learning more as a result, board members, staff, and the community. And that's what we really need to do right now, as much as anything.
Director Pearson.
I think the 5-member committee is a great idea with the appointments by the other people, but I think for the finance committee, Rudy needs to be on that committee, okay? And for infrastructure, either the general manager or Bob Greshams needs to be on that committee, okay?
I think that all the standing committees need to have a staff person that's an expert in that, in whatever the field is. I agree. They're not a voting member, though. That's kind of the distinction there, the staff support member. Because, I mean, I think it's that staff doesn't vote on in those kinds of situations, but their voice is heavily weighted, I would hope, in the discussion, since they're the pros. Professionals, not the pros committee.
And also, I think sticking with the 2 standing committees for now, and maybe in the summer or later we can pass judgment as to whether it's working well and bring on another one at that point.
The 2 people on the committee that would be ad hoc instead of standing have no problem with that, and the other directors are okay with that. Director Farmer?
Yeah, just a slight follow-up on what Director Pearson just said. Perhaps infrastructure, and it would be Director Pearson and you and Director Wharton. Perhaps you could choose 3 people from the community, and then in addition to that would be Chief Engineer Greshams. Just to add one more voice.
Yes.
The more knowledge, the better.
Yes, I think that's what we were saying, that's part of how we would be doing it. And of course, because they're standing committees, they will be announced, the agenda will be published, and members of the public are more than welcome to come and participate. They just aren't voting members of the 5 that are the voting members of a committee.
Right, and I might add that I would hope that, likewise for the Finance Committee, I would have a nominee, and if anybody's interested, by the way, out there, that wants to be nominated to the Finance Committee as a member, I'd be glad to understand that and potentially make my nomination to that group.
And hopefully we will have something in the Cambrian that will, and maybe even put a small ad or something just so that we get interest from people. I hope that people who are involved and interested, whether they're in the room or watching at home, live or later, that they would, if they're interested, they can contact any board member, and if I get a call of somebody that wants to be on finance, I'll direct them to a different director so that they have a, that they might be pointed to that. I think the qualification at this point for those positions is just you have to live in Cambria. I don't think it would be good to have qualified, experienced in that area, but I don't think it, right now we are not at that level of. Director Wharton?
So with on the infrastructure committee, then Bob Gresson's, he would represent like all the people below him, like the supervisors and the actual workers that are out there with the shovels and the. Okay, perfect.
Do we need to take a motion on this?
Yes, Madam President.
I know I keep asking. I just want to make sure we're doing procedurally
Yes,
correct.
I move that we accept everything we just talked about.
Can you read that motion back for me? Wait, I need a second before I put you through that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's seconded by Director Wharton.
Can we just clarify that? Maybe?
Yes, as presented.
As presented.
As presented in the staff report.
And modified. There's
As modified slightly.
And now this is where, because this is the last one and we're almost done, I don't want to end up like we did at the end of January where we still kind of were unsure where the rates ad hoc committee was, which it wasn't on the list last time. So we're talking about two standing committees, finance and infrastructure, with the directors as they are listed in the staff report. We're talking about an ad hoc emergency services committee. We're talking about a liaison to pros of Director Wharton. We're talking about the rates ad hoc committee being as in the staff report, and there were two changes to liaisons on the healthcare district and on the fire safe focus group. Did I miss anything?
Adding legislative to you guys, is that what was decided, that legislative would be
I think
part
that
of
we'll
that?
yeah we'll
state,
handle the
local,
vice
and all
president. President and vice president will handle the
The adjustments are so moved.
So are we creating a legislative ad hoc committee?
According to the Director Pearson, I would accept that.
Okay, so we are also creating the ad hoc legislative committee.
And what's their task?
Yes.
And let's specify a task. I guess
The task is to
work with Dean
Flores
on current legislation.
On
current legislation.
potentially
Yeah.
that potentially affects
We'd be
the district.
reviewing 3,000 legislative initiatives and drop them down to some.
So the legislative committee would be working with Dean Flores and the goals there.
Right.
And who's going to be on that committee?
Director Berenger
President
and me.
Okay. I only say that because, and I think General Manager Gruber would hopefully not necessarily support me, but I've made an effort to, let's say, increase our involvement with Mr. Flores and have made suggestions with regard to how he provides information with regard to what we need as a board and what the community needs to know about what it is he's doing for us. I've also taken the initiative to get a town hall meeting with Mr. Flores in attendance. I'm just saying that he and I have kind of made a connection. That's not to say, therefore, that I should be involved necessarily. I just wanted to say that, and I think he's appreciative of the feedback and involvement that I've had with him.
And I agree too. I agree with that, and I think the legislative ad hoc committee is specifically on legislative matters and not just working with Dean Flores, which is vague.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
And which means that you still are hopefully going to be working with him to do the town hall, and I mean we're not the sole purview of Dean Flores. We're only looking at the legislative issues that may affect the district, which is a narrow focus.
And the fact that you are the vice president and president, that's probably a good idea.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and Harry, I'm still going to work with them on grants and stuff like that I'm interested in.
Yeah,
so,
everybody's
yeah.
going to still continue to use them as a resource, I think. Yeah? Is that acceptable?
So is what, so moved?
Yeah, and I just want to say this, since I kind of take us a little off kilter, I wanted to make the comment that not only has this meeting run really smoothly, but we actually had some humor at the end of the meeting from the vice president, and it seemed to me that it was, how could we say it, a huggable kind of meeting for the first time in a while, and I just want to throw that out there because, we're in a new year here, and so I just...
And clearly everybody read the viewpoint, so that's why everybody's been so kind to each other. I like that. It's a good thing.
I don't want to burden this process, but it probably makes sense to bring the matter back in March, the two standing committees, to really address their members, their composition and their membership.
No, well, that's the composition and the members of the public. What the first task of the two committees is only to bring back the scope of that committee, and then in March we will be appointing 3 members of the public. So those 2 standing committees for this 1 month are just going to be the 2 board members?
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, we just have to actually, in writing, establish the nature of the committee, the composition of the committee, so that it has a real structure.
So we'll meet so that list of items is what the first step of the committee's job is.
So
yes?
staff will have to work with the 2 standing committees to make sure we bring back what they've agreed.
Yes,
Okay.
that's If that's acceptable, that's
that's
what I
fine.
was
That's
thinking.
fine.
That would and then we will appoint the public members at the March meeting after we have that discussion of the scope of each committee.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
All right.
And this is temporary thing. This 5 people, 3 alternate until we figure out if that works or we want to do some other process. But this is for a year.
Correct.
So let me just for clarification and not to hold us up. So each of the directors that are not on the ad hoc committee will be coming back in March with the person that they'd like to have on that ad hoc committee.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Correct. On the standing committees.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
Thank you. Right.
Okay.
So
did we get a second?
moved. Yes, Director Wharton moved and seconded, and the motion was clarified. Do you have questions, District Clerk? Is there anything unclear?
No, we're just
No.
no. Yes, in March we're going to
Set the scope.
set the scope and membership of the standing committees.
Thank you, Vice President Berenger, for that succinct description of what we were talking about.
Thank you.
By the way, I'd also like to comment that Vice President Behringer's beard has really filled in well, and he looks very distinguished today.
Wait till next time.
All right, let's have the roll call, please.
Vice President Berenger,
Aye.
Director Wharton,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
Director Pearson,
Aye.
President Rice.
Aye. Thank you so much. We have one more item, future agenda items.
I move that the future agenda items that are listed on the agenda be placed on the agenda.
Is there anything that needs to go on to the agenda, future agenda items that isn't already listed?
Other than the 2 listed ones, I don't see any, but
I just want to make a comment, and this came up about a year ago. It was addressed by both Director, at that time, Director Behringer and myself, is the use of single pages instead of double pages. And I know it sounds like it's a very minor item in the scheme of things, but considering we are kind of a cash-strapped district right now, I think anything that we can do to at least give the appearance that we're being as fiscally responsible as possible, yes.
Staff time to do double-sided, is that take longer? Which is why we do single-sided. So the amount of time that it takes, the savings, I think, are not the savings in paper or trees.
All right.
not really.
Or ink, but
it's
savings in
staff
staff time.
Okay, cool.
Yes?
Yeah, he signs, yeah. And then,
Yeah.
they should do it as much as possible.
Mr. Gruber.
Madam President, board members, I have 2 agenda items, which would be my goals we've talked about that, and I have some really good guidance, and then also just an agenda item specifically for the sustainable water facility and an update on that and where we are. So
right, that's already on the future agenda items
great.
list.
Thank
so
you.
Is there anything else that's of urgent need? Oh, thank you very much for coming today. We are not even going to need to make a motion.
5 minutes early.
And we started 10 minutes late.
So we're
we are
15 ahead.
adjourned.